Welcome back to a brand new season of TVGP's Critical Misses, a show where we're catching up on all the media hits we missed. I'm your host, Boston. Joining me, as always, is Moonpeer.
Howdy.
And we got another big one here. We have that. We're not just talking about the size of the
Arguably one of the
sandworms.
biggest. Like,
Probably, I think we're gonna
like
be.
out of everything we've covered, has anything had the legacy of something like this?
Yeah,
Like,
I think the Alien season is probably the closest one,
yeah,
but this
maybe.
this is this is this is a big one. We're gonna be talking about Dune. We talked
Mhm.
about this at the beginning of last season, season 23. But we're gonna
And we'll probably sporadically throw that in at every single time we're recording in that season too.
That's true. So let's just do a quick recap here. So for this first episode, we're going to be reading the first part of the Dune book from 1965
Yes.
up until which specific point here again, Moon?
It is a one-on-one fight scene with Paul and another character. I'm just going to say the character's name. It doesn't really matter. It's Jamis or Jamis, depending on how you're going to say it.
Mm-hmm.
It is their fight. Right after that fight, it should be your cutoff point. It ends with at the end of that. I would say at the end of whatever chapter that is in, that is when you want to stop.
And that's some ways into book 2 inside of the book Dune.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the reason we're doing that is because shortly after that there is an introduction to a new thing, and then there is a very brief introduction in that section. Things get weird right after that fight, essentially.
Okay.
And then there is a huge time jump.
Right. Okay.
So I think like we can save this certain. I'm using my words carefully here to try and
Right.
not spoil a bunch of stuff.
Right.
We can use that point as a decent drop-off point for just the general world as a whole, world building, characters, things like that. Then after that, we get into the things that make Dune Dune, essentially.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're going to read up until that point. Next episode, we're going to go watch the first Dune, the first part of the most recent Dune the first most recent Dune movie,
Yes,
2019,
Dune
2020.
2020 Part 1.
Okay, so we're going to watch that. And then after that, we're going to finish the rest of the book in the next episode. And then the episode after that, that will close up this whole season. We'll be watching the most recent Dune movie, Part 2.
Yes.
That should be...
2023's Dune.
Right, that should be out by the time we hit that point. Fingers crossed.
Yes. And as a wing it if we need to, we do have the 1980 whatever it is,
85 I think movie,
something like that, Dune movie, which is ironically enough it keeps pretty in tone with the book right up until that fight, and after that fight it just goes off the rails.
Okay. Interesting. So it's safe to say that you're a Dune fan. Would that be
Yes.
correct?
So
I want to talk
for
about
the
like
longest...
why you like Dune and what Dune means to you.
Yeah, well, for the longest time, my name on AIM was Paul Muad'Dib, so that should give you
Okay.
an idea. Because
Right.
I know it is a common joke among like sci-fi heads and general literary criticism. It's like, yeah, dude, his name is Paul. And
It's a
like,
normal
yeah,
dude name.
we never get it. It's always Arthur or Jacob or Gaston. It's never Paul.
It's never me, man.
So I kind of went down the rabbit hole in regards to that because it actually connected with me for once. It was like, yes, someone with my name
Right.
is the hero in this story. Before we get into what it means to me, I want to know what you know.
I feel like this is one of the ones that's most interesting because I feel like these are the stuff that Dune is one of the things you see referenced the most in kind of two ways. One is this kind of like fun inside joke. Like, Enter the Gungeon has an item called Spice that makes you really strong if you
Yep.
take it a couple of times, but it's the only thing that shows up in the game at some point, and then after a
Oh,
couple of times, you just get exponentially weaker the more you take it. And it's always like,
yep.
wink. You always see references to the sandworms because
Yes, I was
the
gonna say, in a video game wise, like that is the thing. That is
yeah,
the thing that No Man's Sky had me drooling over.
you see them in so many Final Fantasy games. You see them in like so many things. Of just like, oh yeah, we got a big sandworm. Here's a desert planet. Does it have sandworms? Yep. Oh, yep. There they are. We got the
Yeah,
sandworms. Um,
arguably Beetlejuice has that reference in it, as
sure.
does
Yeah.
Tremors is arguably a
Right.
reference to Dune as well.
Right. And I feel the other side of that is the can you believe Dune did this thing? Like a character's name is Duncan Idaho.
Yes.
You have to walk in a specific way on the planet's surface so that the sandworms don't find you. There are no computers anymore because there was like a computer revolt, and now there are human computers that are doing computer things. Like,
So let's talk about that.
sure,
That is an incredible thing to me. Like
yeah,
that conceptually, I think that is probably the thing that makes this different from most other sci-fi. Because
agreed.
almost all sci-fi, like you look at Isaac Asimov's stuff, like his stuff is always the three laws of robotics,
Yep,
robots, androids, that kind of thing.
yep,
The thing that really tickled my brain when I was a kid was, well, what if there was no computers?
right.
Um, and I will say that the Dune itself is full of language that is used a lot less these days
Mm.
for good and bad reasons. So specifically in the history of Dune, the thing that wiped out the computers was called the Butlerian Jihad. So the
Oh,
fact
okay.
that they actually use the word jihad
Mm-hmm.
in the books, they don't use it in the movie, funnily enough, for I think obvious reasons, because it's
Sure.
like what 80 years later. So
Right.
like
Right.
yeah, okay, good choice to maybe not use that word because that is a lot more charged these days, we'll
Right.
say.
Right.
But stuff like that is like, but you don't learn all about that stuff. You don't learn the ifs, the hows, and the whats. It's like, yeah, this is a thing. This is the thing that happened. We're not going to talk about it because that's all you need to know.
You can't trust the computers anymore. Don't worry about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the ironic thing is it's you may not make a computer that operates with the functions of a man's brain. Essentially, is what it's described as.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
cool. Okay, so no AI.
Right. And I think that's the thing that has always interested me in Dune is not only the kind of the most famous parts of it, but also the from the people that love Dune so much. There's always this like incredulity of Dune of just like it's a really great book. Some of it is just wild. Some of it is just science fiction, man, and that's cool. And
Yeah.
that's always been interesting to me of just yeah, what is
Mhm.
this thing, this super famous thing?
They also talk a lot about the nature of humans. Like the
Mm,
funny thing is, I think the first Dune book is a pretty solid sci-fi epic adventure hero's tale kind of stuff.
mm-hmm.
Minor annoyance right off the get-go, it is white man savior syndrome, which I'm not a huge
Sure.
fan of, but also 60s, so
Right.
we're kind of going to have to deal with it. Go look at any Disney movie ever for that problem.
Right.
Um, as you progress further in the books, that's when things go. It's like straight line, relatively normal. Okay, a little bit wibbly in this section, and then you get to the third book, and you're like, okay, this is kind of cool. Sharp left turn.
Right.
And then you get to the fourth book, and you're like, wait, what happened? Huh? Like, there's
I'm here to
been how
question the nature of man. It's like, wait, what?
how many years has it been since the last book? Oh, 5,000 years? Okay, okay,
A
sure.
big old time skip. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, there are
Right.
lots of those. Like, I think think there's 7 mainline books in total. I've only ever read 5 of them because, unfortunately, Frank Herbert died before he really got the finishing touches on the story as a whole.
Right.
But some of the stuff that happens in like those first 3 books, I think, are quality, well-written sci-fi. When you get to the 4th book, that's when things get
Yeah, isn't that when
really weird.
his son started taking over the writing? And
No, I think Paul takes out. Ironically enough, I think it is actually Paul Herbert as his son, so maybe that's where the name came from.
maybe.
But I think his son starts taking over around like book 6 or 7. Like that's when they do it. God Emperor of Dune is still a Frank Herbert insanity.
Right.
Which, yeah. So one of the things we can potentially do, because we've talked about it before, this season is going to be difficult for us.
Scheduling wise.
Yeah, from a production standpoint, from a behind the scenes standpoint, this is a difficult thing for us to do. You guys, hopefully, you won't even feel or taste any of this. It'll be like, cool, another episode comes out as normal.
In between, we've read 450 pages of half of a book. Right.
Exactly. And then very quickly followed that up with another 400 pages of the other half of the book because, time.
Yeah.
So this is also our first really big mixed media season where we're doing a book, a movie, a book, and a movie. If this goes well, we do have the sci-fi miniseries to look at, which is 3 essentially movies, which is based on the first book, the second book, and the third book.
Oh, cool.
And that gives us the foot in the door. If we wanted to do the second book and the third book, we could do it that way.
Oh, sure, right.
So we do have that option in the future as a potential second season of Dune, as something to look forward to. Right. I hate the fact that I move country sometimes because part of the things I gave up was a lot of physical media. Yeah. And I had the collector's edition box sets for the sci-fi miniseries for the 3 books, movies.
Ooh, fun.
They were really well made.
Right.
But it's honestly hard to talk about Dune, I don't know where it came from. I don't know when I first picked her up. I don't know. This wasn't one of those things where someone recommended it to me. As far as I can remember, no one recommended it to me. It could have just been a case of this was a book in my nan's flat apartment. Mm-hmm. That she happened to have. And when I was a kid, she basically said, go nuts. You have free reign. It's an apartment with an old lady in. So guess what we had? A television and books. That's what we had. So when I was a lot younger, I would destroy books. That is the reason I read it when I was 11. That was a mistake.
Me too. I read it. I read so many Stephen King books way too early, and it was definitely one of those where I just nope, shouldn't have read that this young. Yikes.
100% should not have read that. There are scenes in that book that you should not be exposed to when you're that young.
Yeah.
But that was also how I started. That's why I will never bash romance novels, because romance novels were in that library.
Sure.
As was, I'm assuming, this, because that's the only place I can think of where I would have picked it up from. And I remember. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I get the impression that maybe it wasn't initially a mega hit, but pretty soon it seemed to be kind of sci-fi fantasy required reading. It was kind of
essentially, yes.
If you like sci-fi, you should probably just read Dune.
Yeah, and part of that was also George Lucas, because and he has been completely open about it. He has been open and honest about this whole thing. He was like, yeah, when I made Star Wars, a lot of the stuff I did was inspired by Dune.
Sure.
If you look at the designs and the descriptions of a lot of the vehicles, especially around Tatooine and stuff like that in the first Star Wars movie, a whole bunch of that is just that's from Dune, that's from Dune, that's from Dune.
Read this book and go make those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the things that helped propel it. Like, whether people want to like that or not, I think
Hmm.
George Lucas, who made Star Wars, which was the biggest thing on the planet at that time,
Right.
I think him coming out and saying, yeah, a lot of this was inspired by Frank Herbert's Dune, because that is an incredible book, but
Right.
nobody's going to pay me to make Dune.
Right. Right.
You know, because, spoiler alert, it's very difficult to make a good Dune movie, it turns out.
Yeah, Dune famously kind of had so many fits and starts and bad versions and half-finished things, and you know,
Yes.
yeah.
Especially after the way the 85 one went, we'll just say.
I think
And
everybody was like, "We're good. We don't need to.
it
We're
left,
just gonna say
it
you
left
can't
a
do
lot of
this."
people gun shy, we'll
Right.
say,
Right.
about it. But, like, I don't know what it is. I don't know why this grabbed me and spoke to me. It could just be something as simple as, yeah, the guy's name is Paul.
Mm-hmm. Or it could be just
I
right
will.
place, right time. Like you have those books growing up where it's like, even if the book isn't good, I know I love this book because it just hit me at the right time and the right place and the right age, and I was just devouring as many books as I can at every point. It just hit me.
Well, yeah, you're also of the same generation of me, where I'm sure the Wizards of the Coast Do'Urden trilogy hit you just as hard as it hit me at the time.
One of the few fantasy books I've never read. Just like
Dude,
I went all the way around that. I was like reading everything around it, but like just never got into those.
that was this. It was very much the same thing, like with that for me, where it's like, this is the high fantasy thing that I love.
Yeah,
This is the sci-fi fantasy thing that I love.
yeah,
It helps that I'm of the age where both of these are very appropriate for me growing up, to be exposed to them at just the right times.
sure, yeah,
Dune has its flaws. Like, I will say that much as well. Like, I'm not a purist about this. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, it's perfect, it's fantastic. There's
right.
nothing
Never
that you
any
can't do, nothing
problems.
wrong."
Right.
There are a lot of problems. I've already pointed out White Man Savior issue,
Yep.
which was of its time. We
Yeah.
will say, you know.
And there's some element of needing to get a book published. Like especially at that time, you're gonna write a sci-fi book, you're gonna write a fantasy book, you're gonna write a book like this. It's probably gonna star a white dude in the '60s.
Yeah, and also Frank Herbert. I'm not even going to say alleged wrong'un. Frank Herbert is probably a wrong'un. He's most definitely a wrong'un.
Yeah,
However, he's dead now, so he can't really touch me. So that's
right.
absolutely fine.
That's right.
I can, like, he very much in the, what's the guy's name who does all the gothic horror stuff? You know, cosmic horror, I should say.
Oh, I'll think of it
You
as
know
we
what I'm
go.
talking about?
Yeah, I'll think of it.
You know,
Think of it as we go. Yeah.
yeah, very famously a racist person. Frank Herbert.
Lovecraft.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Very
Monstrously
famously,
racist.
not a great guy.
Yeah.
Frank Herbert, less famously, still not a great guy.
Right.
But, like, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. The start of this book can be a chore. I will say that right off.
I
the
have
get-go.
heard that a lot of people bounce off the book at the beginning with the problem with, you run into these problems with fantasy books and sci-fi books every once in a while, where it's like, not even that there's a glossary at the beginning, but it's like, and thus the fourth planet was born, and then terms for 7 chapters, and it's just like,
Yes.
this is so much.
Yes. There is a lot that gets dropped. Like, I think if you can make it through the first, like, 5 or 6 chapters of this book, you're golden.
Yeah, you
Like,
just like kind of push a little bit through it and just kind of know that there's a big hump at the beginning.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's the especially in that time frame, it's the older book problem where they don't know how to do the drip feed of lore. They don't understand
Right.
that if you, like, because unlike Star Wars, where that's not a drip feed of lore, that's just lore getting made up as you go.
Right.
Like, for example, fun fact, at no point during the production of the first trilogy or the extended universe were the Jedi ever not allowed to marry
Right.
until episode 1 came out. Then
Right.
he changed the rules. And
Oh,
then they had
I forgot to mention. Oh, yeah.
throw out a whole bunch of stuff because of it.
Right.
That's less drip feed. That's more, I'm just going to make it up as I go along kind of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, like these days, like I haven't read it, but from what I understand, the Hunger Games does a very good job of slowly bringing you into the world.
I
Slowly.
have read the Hunger Games, and that book did a pretty good job of just like, yep, you're in it. Let's start unfolding it as we go.
Yeah, and it's like characters.
Yeah.
Thing. This is the part of the world they live in before you get introduced to everything else.
Right.
And Dune has the older problem of no, we're just gonna front load this.
Yep.
This is a brick wall that you have to get through in order to get like a lot deeper into the world. But so they'll talk a lot at the beginning of the book. They'll throw a bunch of information at you. It doesn't matter if you remember it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to stick because they call back to it. Ironically enough, they do the drip feed really well because they call back to those things and explain them in greater detail later on.
Gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
at the start of the book, you don't really need to know who the Bene Gesserit are. You don't really need to know about the Kwisatz Haderach. You can wait until halfway through the book to learn about
you get a
all
little
of
bit
that
of
stuff.
inklings there, and then you'll get into it later. Right.
Yes, and like it probably also helps for me that like I read this book when I was in a very much a quotation mode for the first time, so you know that age when you're a kid and you're like, oh, that's a cool quote for whatever
That's right.
reason. It might be edgy, it might be funny. So you get a notepad and you write it down, and then you're just like, cool, this is a great quote. I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life.
Right.
2 weeks later, you've forgotten it.
That's right. Right.
But you've got it written down in a notepad somewhere. That's the important thing.
That's right. That's right.
I will say, traps within traps within traps is a quote from this book.
Oh, okay.
And it is a quote that I have remembered my entire life.
Right. Also, as a Res fan, you have the "Fear is a Mind Killer" reference.
Fear is a mind killer.
Yep.
Yep. The ironic thing is, I think that is probably more known. That phrase is more known than where it came from, I would argue.
Yeah, because I think I knew it came from the book, and then actually Matthew Good Band, I don't remember which one, references it in one of his songs as well. There's a like background one where it says, "Don't fear, fear is the mind killer," and that's kind of repeated for a couple of minutes. So yeah, that's we forgot to mention that as well as another outstanding
one of the things that you know. Yeah. So I don't know. It's I'm very interested to see what you feel about this book.
I'm excited.
We should definitely have a production chat at some point, like probably after we stop recording here.
Right.
About we'll talk about that after the thing.
Turn into the second half of this episode for more.
I know very much like me, you are very much in IDGAF about whether you like something or not. Go look at our opinions for La La Land to figure out just how little we care about other people's opinions.
Yeah, I don't care too much about other people's opinions, and we will definitely share ours pretty honestly.
Yeah, that is not to say that your opinion isn't valid. It's just that if you think something is good and we think something is bad, we're not going to browbeat you with the fact that it's bad.
I'm going to go on Twitter. Let me tell you, I'm a piece of my mind. Start a thread.
Yes. Your opinion is important and valid. Almost all of the time, certain exceptions aside, you know who you are if your opinion is invalid.
Right.
Hopefully, you're not listening to this.
That's right.
You see, now you definitely know who I'm talking about. But you're entitled to your opinion.
Yeah.
Yes. That's fine. You if you don't like it, you don't like it. If I do, I do. Either way, don't throw shade at me. We can have a discussion about it.
Oh, for sure.
We're not going to throw shade or hatred about it. I'm nervous because I think you should like this content as a whole.
It seems like it's something that's in my wheelhouse. Like I like science fiction. I like political intrigue usually. I like the idea of sci-fi that's a little bit different. You know, we're not, like we said earlier, we're not talking about significantly advanced technology to the point where it's, kind of a fantasy. I always bring up the case of like, boy, if only there was like a machine we could take photocopies of. Maybe someday. It's like, shut up. Jesus.
Yes.
You're going in the opposite direction of like, what if it got too advanced and it was bad, so we just shut the whole thing down? It's like, yeah, all right. Now we're talking. Now we got something going here.
Well, like, still, there is space travel and there is all this other stuff. And, like, how does that mechanically work?
Exactly. Right.
Is a big, like, that's probably the thing that, honestly, with this franchise that pulled me in the most was, like, here is little niblets of information about the situation. Like, learning about the guildsman, learning about the thing behind the scenes that causes this, that, and the other, which in the book is a 1-paragraph explanation. In the movie, it's a sentence.
Okay.
And then it's like, yeah, you'll find out about that later. Maybe 3 books down the line, you'll find out about that.
That's a problem for another book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hoping you like it. But at the same time, like, I've always had the opinion of, like, yeah, I adore Dune. Dune has always spoken to me. It's always spoken to me on so many different levels of, like, it has a theme in regards to family, in regards to friends, in regards to loyalty, and the things that you fight for that make it worth fighting for.
Sure.
And at the same time, it does that Game of Thrones stuff, because arguably Dune was Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones 2 with all of the backstabbing. Like, this isn't... This is high sci-fi fantasy, but also low sci-fi fantasy.
And, like, political machinations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious because I'm hoping you would love it. I hope everybody loves it.
Right.
But at the same time, I've never said to somebody, well, you don't like Dune, so therefore your opinion is invalid, because I get it.
We can't talk anymore.
I genuinely get it. It's
right.
like, yeah, I've read especially the first, the opening trilogy. I've read them all 3 at least 40 to 50 times. So I know these things inside to out. I know when there's like a sentence here that's referenced in 2 books' time.
Right.
Like, it's like, okay, that's a cool little call forwards to something that's going to happen 2,000 years from now in the book's kind of universe.
Right.
Like, that's a cool little thing. Like, you'll get a thing in this book called The Golden Path. It's mentioned once, I believe, in the first book. The Golden Path is mentioned once.
Okay.
That is the primary focus of book 3.
Okay. I wonder if that's where, I think that's a Chemical Brothers song as well, The Golden Path. I don't remember.
The problem is it's referenced everywhere.
Yeah, like, it's one of those things where I'm sure, like, every time I turn a page, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. Turn another, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I guess, sure, some of those, yeah. Sandworms, yeah. 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 Oh, God.
I have to ask, because this is another famous thing. Actually, a couple of things. Did you ever play any of the Dune video games? Oddly enough, responsible for the birth of Command and Conquer, one might say.
Yeah, Dune 2 is famously like the first RTS game, which I have not played. I know I've seen a considerable amount of it because it is historically important. Man, I don't think I've played any of them, because I think a lot of the Dune games have had the same problem that a lot of the Star Trek games have been, where it's like, you really tried and they're just not very good. Or like the tech wasn't there yet, because, yeah, of course it's 1987 and you want to make a Dune game because Dune is huge. You just don't have the tech to do it, really. And I don't know if the most recent Dune game is out yet. There's like 2 or 3 that are in development now, I think.
Yes. One of them is the survival MMO game, which I'm very curious to see.
That's the one I'm thinking of, yeah.
You got Spice Wars, which is the 4X game that's currently available on Steam. I know I have a new PC, Boston.
I should probably play that. I like 4X games a lot.
I have a new PC.
Episode 5, here we go.
We could do it. I'm just saying.
I like 4X games a whole lot, and I forgot there's a 4X. I feel like that's one of those things I learned and just immediately pushed out of my brain. It's like, you don't have time to deal with that right now. Don't worry about that.
Dune Awakening is the MMO survival game.
Right, I don't think that's out at time of recording.
I don't want to play the new 4X game. I don't have experience with them, man.
Welcome to 4X, baby. Let's dive all the way in. Gosh. Yeah, but
I like Civ. Is that a
Civ
4X game?
Civ is basically a 4X game, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I am excited to jump into this because this is one of those, oh, you haven't read sort of things, like, oh, you haven't read Dune, oh, you haven't read this, I haven't read that. It's just sort of like, let's get around to reading Dune because it's obviously famous for a reason, and we're gonna be figuring out why.
Here is the thing we haven't really talked about. Do you have any predictions?
Man, I don't think so. I feel like a prediction for a book is probably the hardest thing to predict because I feel like we talked about, there are things most people know going into Dune where it's like, it's a real tough read at the beginning, push through it, get to it, and then it kind of gets really much better very quickly. And other than that, I'm not entirely sure I have any predictions. I feel like the only thing that would be not really a worry or a concern is stuff we've already talked about, which is, it's a book from the 60s, so there's gonna be stuff that isn't okay here in 2023 that is kind of, we know that going in, so it probably some things we're gonna be like, ooh boy, and then kind of keep moving on. So that's probably my only expectation, but I am very excited to jump into this.
Yes.
Oh no.
I've done a little, like, while we've been talking and things like that. I was like, I know there's a Dune is referenced everywhere. How bad is it referenced everywhere?
Oh,
turns
boy.
out really, really badly. It's all over the place. Far Cry 3 has a collectible that mentions a drug called spice, by the way.
Okay.
With interstellar travel as its side effect.
Okay.
Fun.
All right. It's pretty good.
30 Seconds to Mars references it. Fallout has mentats, which is literally a name of people in Dune.
Sure. I didn't even put that 2 and 2 together, man.
Neither did I until I literally saw it right there. Ironically enough, it also, I'm pretty sure that in Fallout, it increases your intelligence, which is what a mentat does.
It really just had a Phoenix Down moment there for a second.
Yes.
It's like, oh, mentat. Gotcha. Right.
Are you ready for even worse than that?
Oh, boy. Okay.
On Fear Inoculum, 2019's Tool album, L'entrée contre la peur is French, and it translates to the litany against fear.
Jeez. All right. Thanks, Tool. Gosh.
So, yeah, Dune is everywhere. Whether you know it or not, you have read, watched, or seen something that's inspired by Dune.
That's right. All right. Any final thoughts here before we get into our first taste of Dune?
Not really. I mean, I have said my piece and tried not to be too fanboy about it. Like, I genuinely love
That'll be the second part.
Series. Yes. No. Well, no. The second part will be answering your questions about, well, what does this mean?
Right.
Can you explain to me again what the Butlerian Jihad was?
That's right.
Or what's this golden path? We don't worry about that.
All in good time.
Book 3. Book 3 is when we worry about that.
That's right. Keep reading. Yeah.
Yes.
Goodness. All right. Well, on that note, let's go read the book.
Yep.
Welcome back, we've returned from our journeys to the sands of Arrakis. I do want to make mention here, we talked about this in the very first part about where you stop.
Yes.
We stop at the end of chapter 33. The very first line of chapter 34 is God created Arrakis to train the faithful. If you have hit
That's such a good quote.
you're good. You stop right there. So if you haven't yet hit that part,
Yes.
come back.
Keep going.
Keep reading. Keep going. It doesn't end at book 1. Part 1 doesn't end at book 1. So we'll be
That
here.
is true.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Boston.
Okay.
What is the interstitial you're going to create for the middle of this episode? Because it is
You know,
all book episodes.
Thinking
Are you gonna,
that
riffle a book into a microphone and use that?
I don't know, because you can clap for Dune if you really want. Clap for those sandworms. I don't know. Maybe I'll have to find another royalty-free piece of book-related, something like taking an inhale of a good book. I'm not sure. That'd be a good one. But yeah, we're here to spend the next hours talking about the first part of Dune.
So here's the fun part. I have made notes, obviously. I have
a bunch of notes,
fair bit of notes. But all of my notes are just basically the plot beats, because almost all of my stuff is in my head.
Sure.
So I think, as much as I would love to lead off on this, I think it's best if you take us through this. Because I know this top to bottom.
Sure.
I think I should fill you in on questions you might have. For example, why do shields exist? Why are people fighting with swords? These are questions I can answer because I know all of the history and stuff.
Yeah,
whereas
I do want to start by saying I feel like I had the inverse problem that most people have with this book, whereas the chorus you hear time and time again is the beginning of this book is so hard and so impenetrable, and you just keep pushing through. I thought it was going to be like the Silmarillion. Like, I thought it was just going to be this impossible peak to climb. That was the part of the book I have the easiest time with. And I feel like the part that people really clicked with was the part that I had a hard time with. So, like, the book starting off with a Gom Jabbar was a thing that I thought was going to happen, like, at the end of this book. Like, that, to me, seems one of the Dune moments. And the beginning of this book is like, hey, man, shut up. Put your hand in this box. Let's go.
It's literally the first chapter. You asked me that. You literally, in a pre-recording an episode, you were like, dude, do I have the right version? Because this starts with the Gom Jabbar. Is that correct?
I mean, it was my worry that I was reading an abridged version where it's like, yeah, we're gonna slice all the fat off that. It's first 6 chapters. Don't even worry about it. Get to the Gom Jabbar. Nope. That's just the beginning of the book is, hey, wake up, Paul. Put your hand in the sphere box. And it's like, okay, all right, cool, good. But I'm 99% sure we've talked about this before, that I like taking the ride with media. I don't want to say, like, man, this dude in the first 20 minutes of the movie did something. He's the killer. And I'm, like, dissecting it the whole movie so I can see, like, I'm going to take the ride, man. Oh my god, he's the killer. I never saw it coming. That's a little bit more fun. So for me, the first couple of chapters of this book where it is, you were in the middle of terms and lore and descriptions and all of this stuff between my love of JRPGs. You've played enough JRPGs for there to be like a flash forward to something where a guy in like a doctor's mask is like, I see the time has finally come, and it switches back to the heroes, and you're like, sorry, what?
Or like a portal opens and somebody sticks their face in. It's like, no, it's too early. Or it's too early.
Oh, what year is it? Am I finally? No, okay. You guys will learn later. It's like, wait, what? So I felt like the combination of those two is sort of like, yeah, man, like I'm in the thick of it at this point. Yeah, you're ready to go to some other planet. You're packing up and you're leaving. Sure, let's go for the ride. Yeah, sure. There's a lot of terms going on here. There's Paul and his mom. Maybe his dad is there. Maybe not. There's this really angry mother priest lady that just seems to hate Paul and his mom, but maybe not.
The Reverend Mother Gaius
Thank you.
Helen Mohaim. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
So I kind of liked that. I kind of liked that this wasn't... Because I feel like with more modern books, you run into... Whether this might happen or not, I feel like... And this doesn't happen with every book. I'm going to stop couching. But there are some books you read where it's very much like... Yeah, you're angling to make this into a miniseries. You're angling to make this into a movie,
Yes.
so you're going to explain everything.
It's franchisable now. Yes.
100%. And, your first couple chapters are like, I awoke, and here's what everything means around my room. And I like that the Dune is just like, nah, man, you're in it. Let's go. Go for the ride.
Yeah. I remember in high school, I think it was, maybe juniors, which is middle school here, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my English teacher once said to me, because we were talking about novels and books, and it's like their quote was something along the lines of all novels and stories, basically anything stories that you are telling, it starts at a point of change.
Right.
Because you are not interested in these people's regular lives, and that is obviously widened out, and it is the case now that sometimes people's regular lives is what people want to hear about, like Star Trek and things like that. But most stories that you are told start when something flips. There is something happening that causes drama. That's what the story is about. It's about the drama.
Right.
Look at Lord of the Rings. It's about, it's about Frodo and Bilbo and
his
Bilbo
comfortable
going away.
life.
It's the big change.
Well, the high school movie starts when the kid moves to a new town and it's their first day of their new school.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And literally the first line of this book is in the week before their departure.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, this is it.
We're getting
Things
ready
are
to
about to
go
change.
to this nightmare desert planet that everybody is terrified of. Let's get going. All right. So I think the beginning of this is pretty interesting. I like the Gom Jabbar stuff because I think
this is one of my favorite scenes in the book. And obviously, a lot of people talk about this because this introduces the philosophy of the world. The humans versus animals conversation starts here and never stops.
Right. Which are you, a human or an animal? Which is interesting. And I like the idea of Paul kind of not being 100% worldly and his mom keeping enough stuff from him that he's just like, yeah, I'll stick my hand in this box, whatever. Who cares? Oh no, this is terrible. And this kind of naivete that over the course of what we've read kind of gets peeled away.
Yes.
And go ahead.
He also doesn't realize exactly what he's being trained, because they mention it a lot in the book. Like, he's being trained by some of the best of the best. He's got a fantastic teacher in Dr. Yui. He's got a great father, a great mother. His combat teacher is probably one of the best swordsmen in existence at that moment in time.
In the entire universe.
Like, his philosophy teacher is also a warrior who can teach him both philosophy and war at the same time.
Right.
His maths teacher is a human computer, and his mother is a space witch who's teaching him to be a space witch too, and he doesn't even realize what that power means. He doesn't realize she's how forbidden that is.
And she's like the space witch. Like she's like the most powerful, incredible kind of... I do kind of like that everybody's like, oh yeah, she's a witch. And she's like, yeah, pretty much. And throughout most of the book, it's just like, I don't know entirely why they're calling her this until she uses her power. And it's like, oh, she's a witch. Okay, cool. Yep, sure is.
We'll get to the Thufir Hawat scene eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think, also think it's kind of interesting that the, you're introduced to the Bene Gesserit as just kind of a fact of life. Like they're
Yes.
just, they are here. They have a power. They're training Paul pretty, like you said, pretty clearly training him, but maybe he's not fully understanding it, and maybe he certainly doesn't know why. Like he doesn't know what
Yeah.
the end goal is.
He doesn't know the implications of his mother training him, and like
Right.
the Reverend Mother even says to Jessica, like, yeah, you've been training him. You shouldn't have done this.
Right.
But in your situation, I would have probably done the same thing too and be damned to the rules.
Well,
Like,
like number one, shouldn't have had a boy. Told you not to do that. Two, shouldn't have trained him like you did. Told you not to do that. Three, I probably would have done it too.
yeah. And four, you're all probably going to die.
Right.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, have fun on Arrakis. I'll be
Uh-huh.
happy to never see you. Bye. And I think it's interesting. I like that there's the specter of his dad throughout most of the beginning of this book. It's just like, yeah, he's really
Hmm.
busy. He's very important. And
Yes.
and Paul, not 100% resenting that, but kind of longing for that, a better relationship with his dad.
Yes. And like he even mentions like he doesn't have any friends. He doesn't get to play with anybody.
Right.
His
It's really just
entire
him and his
time.
mom.
Yeah, it's him and his mom, and his quote unquote companions are the legendary teachers we mentioned earlier. It's like, okay,
Right.
so and they all care about him, so they're all taking the time to, as soon as there's a lesson to be learned, they're teaching it.
Right.
Like, you get the vibe that no matter what they're doing, if he says something off kilter or off key, or he asks a question about something, because he is a very inquisitive young child. Like,
Mm-hmm.
in his conversation with Dr. Yui, he's like, what about this? 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 All
Yeah.
about Arrakis. And it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the quotes too. Like, people forget to learn, I think, is one of the quotes at the start of one
Mm,
of the chapters.
right. And here at the beginning, we're introduced to the Haderach. What? How do you pronounce that?
The Harkonnens.
No, the Kai Watch.
Oh, the Kwisatz Haderach.
Thank you. We're introduced to that, which is like the best
The
of the best.
conceptual.
Right. Like the
I think they describe it as the quote unquote male Bene Gesserit.
yes, that's, I remember. I was trying to remember how they said it. It sort of seems like it's angled as at like the kind of apex of the teaching, where it's kind of the they're making a big deal of, the women. Only really women are allowed to be Bene Gesserit because of
They
lore.
literally only have women
Yeah.
in it.
Um,
And so the thing they hint at here, and it's deeper dived in as well, is the fact that to an extent, the Bene Gesserit all have some form of skills.
right.
Like they refer to the Reverend Mother as the Emperor's Truth Teller, which is a
Right.
fantastic title.
Yep.
But she also has a small gift of future sight, so she can see into the future a little bit. Not a lot,
Okay.
but a little bit. And like they get into it in later books and histories that like some Bene Gesserit can look really well into the future. The guild navigators, that is their specialty, is looking into the future. But everyone is limited in their particular skill set. The whole point of the Kwisatz Haderach is they cannot just see a little into the future; they can see a lot into every aspect of the future.
Gotcha. Um. Gosh, who else do we? I
We don't meet your favorite character yet, but we do meet Gurney Halleck.
Yeah,
Although
who
that's actually after we get introduced to the Harkonnens.
right.
So do we want to cover the Harkonnens first, or do we want to
Yeah, cuz
talk about the Atreides residents?
the this chapter with the Harkonnens I thought was really interesting because the the Baron, the book goes to extreme lengths to tell you that he is grotesquely, offensively fat in a way where I was like, I'm not sure where we're going with this until you
Mm-hmm.
get, I don't know, like 20 chapters later and you realize, oh, he's not only just offensive, like offensive to look at, he's the worst human being in the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yep.
he is just a absolute horrific trash fire garbage person that
Mm-hmm.
is
And
more
tinged with the signs of the times too, because he's also very clearly gay. Um,
yes, the book is sort of like
a little gay panic in there.
a
Not a
little
little, a
bit,
lot of gay panic in there.
yeah, and that was, we talked about it in the first part. It's written as 65, so there's going to be some stuff in here that's, not exactly okay now. Some of that was sort of like, yeah, all right, that was not super great. Um but
But like that's something that is introduced in this first chapter is like he admires how attractive his nephew is.
right.
Instantly pointing him as like, yeah, this guy is like literal scum. Like it
Right.
is
He's supposed to give
he
you the ick.
yes,
Yeah.
that's the vibe you are supposed to get instantaneously from
Right.
him. And his mentat is Pater de Vries, who is also literal scum.
Yeah, and I thought this chapter was really interesting, and I liked the first chapter. I liked this one a lot too because I like that you see later the book calls it plots within plots within plots.
Uh-huh.
And this is your first brush against it where it's like, yeah, we're going to do this, but it's really this, but also it's
Uh-huh.
actually really this.
And something I didn't realize until this time through, they literally spell out every single part of the book that we read.
Yep.
They spell the entire thing out in this one chapter. This is
Yep.
what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. This is
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And this is what's going to happen. The only thing that is off is the Leah Kynes connection falls through.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Right.
That's the only thing that falls off.
Yeah, and
Everything else is exactly as planned.
and it's really interesting to see them kind of lay the whole thing out where it's like, yeah, we're just gonna have like this, we're gonna dress these guys up as these other guys, we're gonna just wipe everybody out, we're just gonna roll up in there and take the whole planet over. Gotta get that spice, man. That's what we gotta do. It's like,
Oh yeah, but in his case, like he explicitly states it here, he wants the Atreides gone. Like,
yeah.
you get the feeling that this is a blood rivalry that has gone back a few generations based on the way they talk about each other from the different families.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's interesting because it seems like it's definitely tinged with, we've been fighting and backstabbing each other for decades and eons at this point. And there's also the affections of the emperor to kind of be
uh-huh.
aware of, where it's like, look, the emperor seems like he's kind of favoring them a little bit more. That should be us. Kill them all. It's like, oh, okay,
Uh-huh.
sure. um,
I, I I like this whole. Did you? I like the whole setup of the politics of the world too, where they explain
mm-hmm.
it's basically a threefold thing. It's like the emperor who is in charge.
Yep.
You've got the Landsraad, which is the great houses, all teamed up together to like they have votes and stuff like that, and they keep the emperor in check. So
Right.
if the emperor starts some stuff with one of them, they can all band together, and effectively it would be all-out war, but they could stand a chance and maybe defeat the emperor.
Right.
If it's one house, that's when the problem starts. Like,
Yeah.
and they talk about how like Duke Leto is he's a charming, kind man. He's friendly. He's got a lot of popular like popularity with the great houses, they're starting to look to him as like a leader, like an emperor in situ kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
everybody really does love him. From even
yes,
that's what Baron Harkonnen is kind of admires and hates about him. Where it's like, man, everybody
uh
loves this dude. What the hell? That should be me. Come on, man.
yeah. Whereas he is literally just he's so embroiled in his plots and schemes.
Hmm.
The Harkonnens are a great house, arguably probably one of the richest great houses, considering they had Dune for God knows how many years,
Right.
and Arrakis, whatever. But because of that situation, he finds himself probably on the outs. So his friend becomes the Emperor. The
Right.
Emperor, who happens to be a very jealous person.
Right. Well, and I think this is where we start getting some idea of the what's the guild, the Merchants Guild or Shipping Guild.
Okay, are we talking about Chome or are we talking about the actual Spacing Guild?
The Spacing Guild. Because I think we get a little bit of Chome here too, but I think this is where we get the first blush from the Spacing Guild of like, look, there's nothing we can do. Just pay them their money. It's literally the only option. Literally no one is strong enough to influence or beat them. It's a known problem. Just deal with it.
Yep, this is how you travel through space. If you are not willing to pay the fees, you don't travel through space, and you literally get abandoned.
Yeah,
so
I like that kind of thing where usually you see in a lot of sci-fi media, it's like this wheeling deal, like, yeah, I'll get you on the ship if you do this for me, and I'll backstab you. It's like, nope, here's the price, that's the price, deal with it. Deal with it or don't go.
Yeah. They even talk about like how they're all gonna get put on a Highliner, which I love that name for a spaceship, by the way, especially a big old boy as a Highliner. They're like, yeah, we're all gonna go on a Highliner. We're all gonna be all of our ships will take up a fraction of this ship.
Really like that, man.
And we will not be allowed outside of our ships, and because Harkonnen might be parked right next to us, we will not touch them. They will not touch us. Because that's how powerful the Spacing Guild is.
It's them saying like, we're gonna move everything in this house and all of our soldiers and every single bit of everything we have. And it's gonna take up like the smallest fraction of the back part of this giant ship. It's like, yeah, there we go. Let's do it. Like, this is some good stuff.
How big is that ship? So do you want to know how it's hinted at? Helen Mahaim says something about it, like she mentions this: the only schools left from the ancient times are the Bene Gesserit and the Spacing Guild school. And she says, we believe that the Spacing Guild is pure mathematics, pure science is what they specialized in, whereas the Bene Gesserit specialize in politics. The reason the Spacing Guild is able to cross people off essentially is because they do have people who can see the future. That's how they plot the drive, the flight of the spaceship.
Oh, interesting.
They have one person who will look into the future and see all the possible paths and plot the flight plan essentially for the spaceship to make them go as fast as possible to get there without crashing into a sun.
Wow. Okay, man, that's cool. You're cool, dude. Yeah. And one of the things I like a lot too is it dances on the line of being almost offensive, but the lack of knowledge about Arrakis overall. Like, they know that water is scarce. They know that sandworms are there and they are terrifying. And they kind of know what they look like in the scale, but not really. And they kind of have these,
Are you talking about the Harkonnens or the world as a whole?
The Harkonnens, really. Well, the Harkonnens, and I guess the, Paul is looking at the,
He's learning about Arrakis.
Yeah, and like microfiche or whatever, like whatever their term is for microfiche, basically. And I kind of like that everybody is, it's like traveling in New York in the 80s where it's like, hey man, don't look at anybody. Don't go here. It's pretty terrible. Bring your own stuff. And I like that their whole thing is like, look, this planet sucks. And however bad you think it sucks way worse than that. So you better get ready for like the most terrible suck of all time. And also, there's no water, and also you're gonna die. So let's go get that spice. Like, I really like that it's not just like, oh, we're rich and it's gonna be hard because we don't have any money. It's like, no, this planet will kill you and it will love doing it.
Yeah, I think it's the conversation between Thufir and Paul, and like Thufir explains to him like, no, like bad is not a strong enough name for the storms that exist on this planet.
That's right. This place turbo sucks. Like, you're really not getting it.
Yeah. The storms will strip your flesh from your bones and then grind your bones to dust.
Yeah,
is a particularly good description. Because we hear about all the time, like you hear about storms that go around the ocean, but they don't hit land. They just go around the ocean, and because they've got nothing stopping them, they just keep building and building and building, and then they hit land, and that's when you get hurricanes and tornadoes and things like this. Whereas this, they're explaining, like, the planet is just a desert. It's a huge desert. There's
literally nothing else
blocking the way. So guess what? You're gonna have some storms there. I love the build of like how dangerous it's gonna be, and something we also probably should talk about in the Harkonnen section. The hype train starts here for the Sardaukar.
Yes, of just like, you send a couple of them in there, they'll take care of anything you point them at, and the idea that they are like the top of the best of the warriors that you could possibly get.
And they all fight for the Emperor. That is all that they are there for. The Emperor points, and they do what he says.
And they are unbeatable and the strongest and the best fighters, and et cetera, et cetera. Which I appreciate that they go so hard into pointing that, because I think that makes payoffs on Arrakis better later. Because they really do push that, like, these are just, you send one of them on a planet, that planet's dead. Like, they're just, they are the best.
Like, I think the Baron literally says, like, the Emperor, to Paita, you would love to see the Emperor drop 2 legions of Sardaukar on this planet and wipe me out.
Yep.
And he's like, I don't even think he says 2, I think he says 1 or 2. It's like 1 or 2 legions.
Just a handful.
Destroy the planet. One of the richest great families out there who definitely have an army.
Right.
And 2 legions could destroy that planet. That's horrifying to think of.
Right. And I like, too, that they, at the same time, they're also like, look, don't mess with the sandworms. We know enough about them to know that they are the worst, and they will kill you, and they love spice, and they will just, like, for real, don't even get to a place where you will see them or you're dead. Like, it's just, we don't know a ton about them. We know they're huge. We know they suck, and they're terrifying. Then the planet is just lousy with them. And we only go on, like, a fraction of the planet's surface. Yeah. And they're terrible there. Like, we can't even go everywhere else.
I love later when they start talking about the mining process for the spice, and they're talking about how, like, we get in, we get what we can, and we go. Like, that is what you do.
Yeah,
you dip
don't
your
mess
and
around.
You boogie.
Yeah, and I kind of like that the book doesn't really spend a ton of time before you just go to Arrakis. Like, there's plenty of stuff, like Paul gets
the
more
Halleck scene.
Yeah, Paul gets more training from who? Gurney, I think he gets, like, the sword, more sword training from. Yeah.
Gurney Halleck is the trainer because you know who has already left the planet. Right.
And I keep reading this as Gunny Halleck because I've watched too much NCIS in my life. So I like Gurney quite a bit because he's this kind of... He's a character.
He's a poet troubadour, I believe is how they refer to him as.
Yeah, he's like... He plays some great music on this thing he carries around, and he also will, like...
The balisette.
Yes. Oh, it's such a good name, man. But he also will, like, cut you into ribbons at a moment's notice.
I'm not in the mood for fighting is one of my favorite conversations. Like, oh, excuse me, what did you say?
I'm sorry. Pardon? You're not in the mood for what? That's. I like that they're early in the book. There's a lot of like smacking some sense into Paul's scenes of like, oh, you're not in the mood for fighting. Oh, well, I'm so sorry. My young master.
Mood is a thing for music or love, not fighting. Fighting is what you do when you have to.
It's a really good line of like, mood is the for music or love is really great. And I like that scene. I like Gurney quite a bit. I like you get to see here that Paul is clearly a good fighter and intelligent. He's not just your stereotypical rich kid.
He's not Luke Skywalker.
Right. That's right. But I kind of like that you start seeing, like, Paul has been sheltered, and obviously they're wildly rich, but he seems
sheltered
to have...
but trained.
Yeah, and he seems to have taken his training seriously. Like, it's not a, like, oh, my sword, like, it's not, like, he knows his stuff, he knows how to use a shield, he knows how to use his weapons, like, he's good at what he does. And I think it's... Good.
Do you understand the shield nature? How, like, basically the reason everybody fights with swords these days is because shields got so good that firearms don't do anything to them anymore.
Right.
So,
which
like,
I thought was
you
really
can
interesting.
An AK and it's not going to damage people.
It just ping, 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 ping.
Exactly. However, so that means that now this feudalistic style of fighting has come back into the popular zeitgeist because you need to do the whole sword fighting routine in order to get people back on board with the being able to get up close and actually kill someone. It's all about how good you are with swords, not how much projectile weapons you have anymore.
Right.
And I like that even in close combat, it's about the feint to allow the gap to let the slow blade go through.
Right.
And it's a really good, hey, it's fighting within fighting, just like traps within traps and everything else that's going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I like that, because I think so much sci-fi is like, I've got a better laser gun than you do. Pew, 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 pew. But I like later on Arrakis, which we'll touch on later, when that gets turned on its head of, hey, these are giant guns we've never seen before. We are completely unprepared for them. That's an interesting kind of twist on that.
Yes.
And I think this was basically where Halleck is like, yeah, man, I'm going to Arrakis. See you there, yep. I guess, if we make it.
I'll be going today. You'll be going tomorrow.
Yep.
Final preparations are taking place here. Yeah, so this is also where we meet Dr. Yui for the first time. And again, we know he's the traitor. We've been told that in the second chapter of the book.
So this is one of the things I actually really love about this book is it is so free with changing perspectives in between paragraphs. So
it's not just one. Like, we should mention, this book isn't told from Paul's perspective. This is told from everyone's perspective.
And I really like this because sometimes you'll have a conversation between like Paul and Dr. Yui, or like Jessica and Dr. Yui, and the perspective switches every paragraph of like, oh, now Jessica's talking, oh, now he's talking, wait, now we're getting his internal dialogue about how he doesn't want to kill them, but he is the traitor, and he doesn't want to do it.
Give him the gift of religion and hope while knowing I'm going to kill him.
Right. And like, they have his wife potentially, even though he kind of doesn't believe it, and then
he believes she's already dead.
Right. And then everybody's being like, well, he can't be the traitor because he has the
the Suk School Imperial Conditioning.
It's the Imperial Conditioning as a 2-word phrase is so good.
It's really good.
It tells you everything you need to know as soon as you hear that, where you're like, oh, yes, well, he's been indoctrinated. They has like the tattoo. He can't be controlled. He's like under the control of the Emperor.
So literally the conditioning is you can't do harm. You cannot physically or mentally do harm to another human being.
It's so good.
Imperial conditioned doctors are people who literally have to live by the doctor's code of ethics that we know it today. They have to do it because that's the way their mind has been programmed to work because of this school.
So good. Dune is full of those almost throwaway topics and like lines and phrases that are all just so good. Where it's like, yeah, Imperial conditioning, perfect. I love it so much. But I really, this is where I think I really started to enjoy that kind of free-form perspective in the books, where you're getting internal monologue from at least one, if not two characters. You're getting multiple people talking and switching perspectives. And in a lot of books nowadays, you'd get, here's one person's perspective, you'd get a hard line break, you'd get the other person's perspective. But I like that this is a lot more free to kind of switch and meld and move. I like that a lot.
Like, in that whole, like, the scene with the Doctor and Paul, like, when he gives him his wife's Orange Catholic Bible, I love the fact that it's an Orange Catholic Bible, by the way.
It's so good. Man.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not make a machine in the image of a human, or the image of a man, is a great line from that.
Yeah.
Which, yes, we did get the Butlerian Jihad mentioned right at the start, by the way.
Yes, that's true.
AKA
I forgot about that.
The moment when they wiped out all smart computers, hence the Mentats.
I like the Orange Catholic Bible he gives him is like super tiny, and he just puts his fingerprint to it, and it opens up to a specific passage that he's looking for. Like, that's the kind of day-to-day sci-fi that I really like. Of like, why would I make a giant big book when I can make a tiny one that just shows you exactly what you want to use? And it's like, and perfect.
Even the best part is that technology is outdated, because Paul even mentions, like, this must have been made before what we use now, because
that's true.
We're not even going to use this anymore. It's a really nice little backwards and forwards between the two. But like you said, like, the perspective changes is cool because you're getting the mental gymnastics of a tiny young child who's about to go into hell, and he's curious and he's excited and his emotions are all up in a blur, and you're getting the super dark side of this grown-up who knows he's about to do something genuinely evil. Genuinely evil
to this family he works for and has taken him in. And like, he genuinely does love. And because of the previous chapters, it's probably going to happen, because the Harkonnens somehow made it happen to this person that is supposed to be this, like, infallibly good person, and they have managed to somehow twist that. Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, it's great. I the plots within plots within plots is the most apt description of a lot of this stuff.
Yes. We do meet the dad at last.
Yeah, Duke Leto or Leto?
It depends. I call him Leto.
Okay.
But
we haven't watched the
Leto.
movie yet. I haven't watched the movie yet, so I'm not up on the movie's pronunciation.
Yes, I think the movie calls him Leto. I think the audiobook calls him Leto, which is just like, okay, whatever. Yeah. Fine. Use what you want, I guess.
The man of many names.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Red Baron, as he is named later.
Right.
Sure, why not? But this scene with him and Paul is just so charming. Like, the Paul asking questions, his dad trying to be the Duke with him, but also trying to be a dad. And like, Paul asks him a question about, like, how dangerous this is going to be, and you get, like you said, you get the internal monologue of Leto right there, and he's like, it describes him smiling, like he's going to say, no, everything is going to be fine.
It's not that bad.
He doesn't.
Right.
He stops himself and he's like, no, we have spared no expense when it comes to this guy's training. He knows about threats. They know about poison, by the way,
Right.
which is great.
Right.
All the different kinds. All of that stuff they know about. So he just sits him down and he has an honest conversation with him about the whole thing. And he's like, yeah, this is going to suck. But
It
guess
all
what?
the way sucks, man.
Uh-huh. Well,
Yeah.
and Paul's like, well, why don't we run away? And like you said, traps within traps. He's like, look, we see the knife now. We
Yeah.
know the hand that holds the knife.
Right.
So, which is a great usage of words.
Well, and it's really cool to see too. The Duke is like, we're walking into a trap. I'm not gonna lie to you, like it's a trap, and we're walking right into it. But because we know it's a trap, and we know the Harkonnens hold the knife, now we can try and maybe maneuver our way out of the trap and turn it against them. And it's like, all right.
They even know the Emperor's involved because they're like, yeah, guess who else has been stockpiling spice? The Emperor.
And what is he doing it for? Don't know, but probably nothing good. And I like that about the Duke, where it's like, I'm not an idiot. Like, we didn't get into this position by being stupid. We know what's coming, and we know what's going to happen. So let's try to avoid it. Like, let's go in knowing that this is going to be a thing. Let's try to avoid it. It's like, all right,
and
cool.
He even gets the successful path right. He's like, look, yes, this is crap, and yes, they're going to send the Sardaukar, and yes, we're probably going into much more risk than we should be taking right now.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about Seleucia Secundus. Let's talk about the Emperor's prison planet and the Sardaukar and where they come from. And what does that make you think about? And Paul even says Arrakis sounds like Seleucia Secundus.
Yep.
And what else is there on Arrakis that the Harkonnens hate and, in our opinion, have vastly underestimated?
Mm-hmm.
The Fremen are right there.
Yep. And I like that Paul even underestimates them. Again, this was written in 65, so there's a little bit of like, the savages, which is like obviously something that is not okay anymore to call or reference anyone. But I like that even he is sort of like, even Paul is sort of like, okay, maybe I have underestimated them too.
He puts it together.
Yeah, like maybe there's something to this planet. If someone can live there, maybe there has to be something to it.
I hate how it's used these days. I genuinely do hate how this phrase is used these days. But this is the quintessential hard times make hard men conversation.
Yeah.
Like, these people live in a really nasty place. A nasty place that the weak don't survive.
Also, we sort of skimmed over it. Can we talk about how cool the idea is of a prison planet? Thank you, sci-fi. That's very cool. Please don't make one in real life. But the fact that
he's
like,
gonna. It'll be sponsored by McDonald's.
Sponsored by Tesla, more like. But like, I like the idea that he's just like, hey, this prison planet sucks because it's a prison planet. This sounds an awful lot like that, huh? And it's like, okay, so you're finally starting to get the idea that Arrakis is the worst.
Yes, and they're hoping, and we stop at that point. So okay, so I can't talk about that section yet. That section, which is later in this book. But I do like the fact that he literally calls it out. He's like, look, we have some really great soldiers. We do. Right. We genuinely do. We have probably the second best army on in the galaxy right now.
Yeah.
But it's not the biggest. We need reinforcements because we're not rich. Like, we have maybe 2 legions and they're trained. Maybe they're Sardaukar level, maybe they're not. Maybe they're underneath the Sardaukar.
Halleck is great. He's done a good job. We just don't have the numbers.
Yeah, and we don't have the money. And that's what we need.
Right.
And right here we have a planet which literally generates money.
It prints money in the sand.
And we have the opportunity to potentially increase our army size by who knows how many, because nobody bothers to count the Fremen because nobody thinks they're worth anything.
Right. Yep.
So we sent our boy there like 2 months ago to go and deal with this and try and make overtures with them.
Who did they send? Thurfer?
They send you nope. They send your boy.
That's right, Duncan, Idaho. That's right. The
Yes,
best name in science fiction.
the
Duncan, Idaho.
swordsman supreme. They sent
Yeah.
him there.
Who is actually a pretty cool character.
Uh huh.
Which, based on name alone, I'm like, this could be like one doofy dude. He's not going to get it done. But Duncan Idaho's actually pretty cool.
Uh huh. He's literally the greatest swordsman alive at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And I like that even the Duke is just like, I sent my best dude, Duncan Idaho. Like, he's on Arrakis now trying to make friends with the Fremen, trying to figure out how we can work together, trying to get some sort of foothold on the planet whatsoever, and he'll be able to do it. It's like, dang, all right.
And also explaining to them, yo, we're not the Harkonnens. We're not going to come in here and kill you for sport like they've been doing.
Yep.
Like, that's not who we are.
Right. It is interesting hearing the comparison between the Atreides and the Harkonnen, because they talk about it later, but there's the Atreides are giving a big feast, and they said, oh, like, aren't you going to do this thing with the big tub of water that everybody essentially like
the
dumps
the towel tradition?
Yeah, towels, and you're dumping water on the floor and just wasting it. And the Atreides aren't good, like, to be clear, but they sure as hell aren't the Harkonnens. Like, the Harkonnens are just brutally, horribly horrific in every major and minor way. And if you didn't get it up until that point later in the book, like, the idea that they're just wringing water out on the ground and just for the sport of it is pretty terrible.
Yup.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think at this point we might. Oh, yes, Paul might be a mentat, by the way.
Wait, no big deal.
Yeah, he might be a human computer.
Yeah, just a walking computer, and like this other sort of super Bene Gesserit.
The best swordsman and the witch training and everything else. He might just have one of the fastest minds that exists, by the way. Just as an aside.
Yep. See you on Arrakis.
I like the fact that I like the description of that, like the conversation between the two of them, and like his dad says, "Look, you have the potential to be a mentat," and then Paul's like, "Well, no, because when you're a mentat, you have to be trained from a kid, and you can't be told about it, and you have to go through all of these tests and everything else, and then it clicks, and he literally
and then he's like,
it as a click in his brain, and then all of a sudden, all of these facts like shuffle themselves like a filing organizer." Slot into one file, deposit it into his brain. He's like, cool. I have the potential to be a mentat. That's
right. You put the cartridge in the ass and turn it on. It's like, yep, I'm a mentat. It's like, oh, yeah, right, okay.
And the fact that they give him the choice too, and he's like, look, you can potentially do this. Do you want to continue the training?
Yeah.
And he says to him, like, yes. And in his head, Duke Leto is like, Jesus, he's going to be a hell of a leader because he's passionate. He's got a sense of rightness, which we've heard his mom mention to him before. He's got all of the best training, and he's a mentat. Like, all of these things are just tallying up to be like, people don't know what they have in this kid, because that's all he is. He's a kid. People don't realize that this kid this isn't no Mary Sue thing where she's suddenly the best at everything. It's like, no, he has been trained from birth, likely, to be the best of the best of the best.
Right.
Like, it's a cool moment, and it's like, yeah, cool. Now we go to Arrakis, I guess.
Yep. And now we gotta make our way on this nightmare planet covered in sand and spice and sandworms. And the Fremen.
Yup.
Knowing that someone has a knife at your back already.
I do like the fact that, like, when we arrive on Arrakis, we get more of the relationship between Jessica and Leto. The whole concubine, not wife thing really gets, like, brought into the forefront on Arrakis rather than beforehand.
Yep, which it's interesting because I think for most authors they probably would have brought it up beforehand, but I think the relationship between the Duke and Jessica is more important here on this planet, where politics are even more important. And I like that you get that at the same time that you get the like mounted head of whatever that beast is in the Great Hall.
The bull. It's
the bull,
literally it's a bull.
Yeah, bull with bloody
that's
horns.
what made me think of this whole relationship, because it's that, and it's the history of the house.
Yes.
And Leto's dad, who died fighting a bull, dude. By the way.
Yeah, like
for sport, for fun, because he was a fan of bravura, as it's referred to as.
Right. Yeah, this whole thing is pretty interesting, and I think it's interesting that it sets up the idea. I didn't really buy it for very long, but the idea that Jessica could potentially be a spy and be sort of turning against the Atreides.
I like the fact that nobody buys it but Thufir. Everybody else is like,
everybody's like, dude, this lady, she's like the nicest. And
sorry, Duncan buys it as well. But
yeah,
Duncan and Thufir are the two who buy it. Everybody else is like, Paul is like, no. Even Leto is like, explains to Paul, I have to act this way.
Yeah.
People are not going to watch you, so you have to know, so you can tell her in the instance that something happens.
Yeah, if I
Spoiler
die,
alert, something happens.
Right. And we also get this really interesting scene where Jessica finds the like hidden greenhouse essentially in the manor that has a Bene Gesserit coded message left for her, in like a real adventure game sort of way, where it's like, oh, this leaf is hanging strange on the bottom of it is like a Bene Gesserit script, and I was like, all right, that's actually pretty cool. You got like you're playing Myst right now.
And we also meet the shout-out Mapes in this whole sequence.
Yeah, she's the maid,
Fremen,
I guess,
house
essentially.
lady.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I guess they're kind of treating her as a maid, really. The kind of I like Mapes a lot because it's this kind of like, yeah, man, you can tell me what to do. No, I'm okay. Thanks. Like,
I'll do what I kind of want to.
Yeah.
So I think this conversation is what kind of brings it to the forefront, but it's been mentioned in passing up to this point. But we need to talk about the Missionaro Protectiva.
Yes. Which I think I have an idea of what this is based on the last couple chapters before we finished this part.
Okay.
It seems to me that this is it's spreading the good word about the Bene Gesserit to everywhere possible, but also kind of at the same time like seeding possibilities across the universe.
Essentially, yes. Basically, the Bene Gesserit don't think in terms of one lifetime. They don't think in terms of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. They think in terms of 2 generations, 5 generations, 10 generations.
Right.
So any chance they get when there is a civilized planet, they have somebody go there and spread, as you so aptly put it, the good word. So they build in prophecies into the local religion and stories and tales of what might be and potentials.
Their
things
myths
like that.
And their stories contain the Bene Gesserit and Mentats and all of this stuff, so that later you see Jessica lean on it, where it's like, I wonder if this is going to happen soon, or do your stories tell of this? And they're like, oh, it does. And she's like, got him.
Yes, because all of the Bene Gesserit are taught all about the Missionaro Protectiva, so they know what code words to use, how to phrase particular language, basically to trigger a safe space for them to be embraced by the people, the native people, so they have safety in times of need. It's basically an emergency life raft, except instead of just a thing that you pull a button on and it inflates, this is manipulating entire planets worth of people.
Right. No big deal.
Which is a scary thing to think of when you really put your mind to it.
And it's interesting to see Jessica use it to her benefit later, of like, boy, we really need these people to accept us. How about this? And they're like, she's the one, he's the one. Oh my goodness. And it's like, It got him. It worked perfectly.
And they even say, like, part of Arrakis is, yes, the mission Arrow Protectiva is there. However, it's different. It feels different. There's something different about it. Like, it's been in here and kind of twisted a little bit. It's not the usual thing. It's just
a little off.
Twist.
Yeah. And I think pretty quickly, once they start settling in, Paul goes to go lay down or take a nap or whatever, and then
the Hunter Seeker.
Yeah, the Hunter Seeker, which is a great name, tries to take him out because it seems like the plan was going to be that Dr. Yui was going to give Paul a sleeping pill, essentially, to kind of knock him out. The Hunter Seeker would come in, take him out, and then kind of be on their way. But
I don't even think Yui knew about this particular plan, but Piter definitely did.
Yeah, I feel like they didn't, because they eventually find the person that was piloting the Hunter Seeker, like, sealed into the walls of the basement, which is really
literally
good.
Bricked in.
It was really a really good thing of, like, no, he's not outside. He's been here for months.
Inside of a wall.
Yep.
Waiting for this moment. And they even designed the room to specifically appeal to Paul.
Right, because, like, the iconography in the room and, like, the headboard and all that stuff was supposed to be appealing to him, which I thought was really good.
Yes, because it was very Caladan kind of inspired, because it was all water creatures like fish and things like that, which is things he grew up with. So it's like, very clever people.
Yeah, that's very...
nasty people, but clever people.
That's right. I'm terrified and in awe of them.
And I like the fact that we get more about the Bene Gesserit training that Paul has had here, because this is where they've done it a little bit here, but they're talking about, like, no, this is like supreme control of the body, like consciously making your heart beat, consciously controlling this effort, and something that someone else refers to as the weirding way, which I adore the terminology of the weirding way, which is like basically they have the ability, the Bene Gesserit and Paul now, because of this, to literally have your entire muscle mass, all of your body, everything about you, every cell that you have in your body, controllable by you consciously. So they have this thing where they can turn a limp, loose muscle into something so much stronger and so much quicker because of the preparations. Like, they can move like a little, like a single, like part of their body. Like, they do hand exercises where they're moving like the smallest bit.
You want your pinky finger to kill a man? You know, like, you can do that.
And like this is how he basically escapes it, is by having that training, being able to override, again, Gom Jabbar reference, override the need to run, to think it through, figure out what the actual course is to do, and then Shadow Mape shows up and he literally saves her life. Yeah.
This is I like this whole thing of, and I think this is where Dr. Yui is also sort of like, oh yeah, they're for real about killing this family. Like, this is the real deal. Like, this isn't just the Harkonnens playing. They aren't just talking about this.
Yeah, and I think this one of the reasons I like the Hunter Seeker scene as a whole is because this is Paul's wake up call. Yeah, it's like, you've arrived. This is the situation. You almost just died. Yeah. By the way,
welcome to Arrakis, baby.
Get serious.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the rest of this stuff is pretty interesting here, of them kind of getting used to Arrakis and sort of not wanting to deal with the Fremen, and they're breaking the they're talking about everything. Like, you get them talking about the smugglers who exist there, romantic businessmen, as Leto calls them, which is a chef's kiss of a reference for smuggling. And again,
world building. The Harkonnens are POS because, yes, the rules of the change were followed to a T, which I love the rules of the change as a terminology too, by the way.
Yep. And there's like a master of the change. Like there's
Yes, which is
officialness
Kynes,
around
the
it.
planetologist.
Kynes,
The
yes.
planetologist is the one who's looking over it.
Also, the planetologist as a title is so good. Yeah.
It's really great.
Yep.
But like they followed the rules, but hey, guess what? All of the machinery that they left us, nothing works. Everything is like a spit away from breaking. So
we
technically, yes.
We left you the machinery, of course. Oh, you wanted it to work. Oh, you guys didn't say that. So sorry. Anyways, bye.
Yes. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And Duncan shows up and brings a guest with him to meet the Duke during a big staff meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we meet Stilgar.
Yeah. I feel like Stilgar is the person I remember the least in this.
Oh, you'll remember Stilgar. Stilgar is the leader of the Fremen tribe. He's basically he's the leader of the tribe that Duncan went to go meet with.
Okay. Right.
He is
okay.
the leader of Sietch Tabr. And he's the one who Duncan started building a relationship with. He's the one who comes in and has the meeting with the Duke because this is their chance to start the outreach program, essentially.
Right.
And the Duke is very plain with him, and he says, "Yes, we will not hunt you. Everything will be as you want. You have your land is your land.
Yep. We're not interested in it.
We're not going to hunt you. All we want to do is mine the spice." And we'd like to develop some form of friendship. And Stilgar's like, well, Duncan fights real good. So maybe, Duncan, are you like 100% allied to this Duke guy? Can you like maybe come and live with us for a while?
That's right. The Fremen are pretty cool, man. You want to come live with us? Sounds all right.
This is also where we get the first drop of Liette as well, because Duncan asks, well, can I potentially do both? Can I live with you and help you, but also still serve the Duke? Because Stilgar's been hunting Harkonnens, apparently, who are still on the planet, and Duncan's been helping him with it.
Right.
So he's like, well, Liette serves two masters, but that I find this arrangement acceptable if your Duke does. And the Duke say, yeah, cool. This is exactly what we need. And he literally, almost with urgency, is like to Duncan, do it, go do it. No, please,
do it.
I need this.
Perfect. That's right.
And Stilgar spits on the table.
I like that the Duke is like, you dare? And Duncan is like, wait. Hold on. You gotta learn some things about the Fremen and living on Arrakis. This is like, wasting your water is like the highest compliment in sealing a deal. So,
which it makes so much sense when you think about it, but based on our whole lives, he's just like on the table.
Sounds like a good deal.
Duncan's like, and Duncan's like, we thank you for the gift of your body's water.
Yep.
And then the Emperor does it. Oh, sorry, not the Emperor. The Duke does it too. He spits on the table as well.
Yep. He's like, yeah, that seems like fun. Let's do it. Yeah. I do like the whole thing with the Fremen about we're going to use every last possible drop of water we can in every instance because Arrakis has absolutely zero. And like, you're reclaiming it, you're reusing it, you're trying to get it from everything and everywhere. And it's such a cool thing.
A properly like fitted and applied and well-maintained still suit can reduce the loss of moisture to a thimbleful a day.
I know, that's so great. I like that they lean into it so much of just like, we told you Arrakis was terrible, and you're going to be drinking your own sweat. So, and we have suits to make you do that. Welcome to Arrakis. Like, it sucks.
And you'll like it, is the scary part.
That's right. Everybody has the little like scab on their face from where the nose thing is going.
That's a really nice touch.
Yeah,
like the nose tube that causes like Stilgar's got like a gap in his mustache where the tube goes through.
It's really
beard.
good. Yep. Man, all that little stuff just you can tell that Herbert really thought about the kind of day in and day out life of it, rather than like, yeah, they're all perfectly beautiful people that just drink their own sweat. It's like, no, this is like
Yes,
a
they have
hard
magic
place to live.
bubbles.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is just a hard place to live, man, and they're making it happen, and they're thriving in this impossible planet.
And we should mention that at this point, Jessica and now Duncan have a Chris knife.
Yeah, the Chris knife is
What's a Chris knife, Boston?
It's like this impossible blade that I think, doesn't she get hers from Mapes? Because Mapes is going to be like, "Welcome to the planet. I'm here to kill you."
You either fulfill a prophecy or I stab you in the chest right now.
That's
of moment.
Right. And Jessica gets hers from Mapes. Because Mapes is essentially like, look, when you pull out this knife, it's gotta kill somebody. So don't put it away without it like tasting blood.
It needs to draw blood.
Yeah.
And shout out Mapes even stabs herself or cuts herself, which coagulates almost instantly.
Right.
Which is a nice little touch too. This would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty. How does Duncan get his? Does he get his from the Fremen?
He storms into the meeting because he has captured a Chris knife. While him and Stilgar were killing Harkonnens, one of the Fremen died. The Harkonnens were trying to get a Chris knife so they could give it to Paita, so Paita could come and do sneaky stuff on board Dune.
Gotcha.
And then he brings it to show it to the Duke, who is about to unsheath it, and that's when Stilgar storms into the room and is like, "Don't you dare take that thing out of this
I can't
blade."
explain it, but don't do it. Yeah.
And that's when they get into the whole thing of like, okay, this is your tradition, this is your way. I am the Duke. I can do what I want, but this is your way, so we will not unsheath this blade because that is what you have requested. And that's how they get the foot in the door.
Yeah, and he's smart enough to say, like, all right, no one tells me what to do, but we do need you as allies, so I guess we can follow some of your rules.
And it's not mentioned here. It's kind of hinted at a little bit later. But what they don't realize is they're basically dealing with number 2 Fremen. Like, the second in command of all of the Fremen.
Yeah,
like
on the entire planet.
The only person higher than him is Liet.
Right.
Everyone else is below him. Like, he mentions later on, like, at the Council of Elders, take my heed. I'm essentially number 2 in strategy discussions. Like, Stilgar is very important, and they don't know how important he is now. And I like the fact that they use their natural way they are to make friends with arguably the most important person they could make friends with.
Right.
This is the next thing. I know exactly what the next thing is without even looking, but I'm looking anyway just to be safe. This is when we meet Kynes.
Okay. Kynes is a character I still don't know if I like or not. They very appropriately determine that he's gone native pretty quickly, of just like, oh, he was one of ours, but he's pretty much a Fremen at this point.
He's married a Fremen, he speaks like a Fremen, he walks like a Fremen, he has a Fremen honor guard when he shows up.
Right. Like, they have accepted him pretty completely. And he really does, he does like the Fremen a lot. Like, it's not just, this is his job, like, he really does sympathize with them as a people, in a way that I think...
Because he has a plan. He has a plan that he has put into effect that we don't know about yet, that gets hinted at here and there, but you don't learn about until later. Right. Especially when the hallucination scene, you learn about it a lot more then. He has a plan, and he has instilled hope and faith in the Fremen.
Yeah, he said, on a long enough timeline, I'm going to bring water and green plants onto Arrakis. And the Fremen...
The slow way is the safe way, is one of Stilgar's go-to lines later,
that's a really good line. Yeah. And I think I get the impression that Duke Leto wants to do it as well, but he wants to do it now. Like, he wants 5 years, water better be flowing all over this planet. And
Yeah.
Kynes
He
is
wants
like...
to make it habitable.
Right. And Kynes is like, bro, that's... You can't... You're gonna destroy this planet if you do that. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah, because you'll also bring down because doing so would remove desert, and that would remove profit, and when you start to remove profit, that's when you end up getting the attention of the Emperor.
Right.
The Chom, the Landsrad, all of this stuff depend on this planet.
Yeah, this one planet. They need it. Yeah.
This is the first mining. This is how we learn about the spice mining.
Yes.
When I'm gonna keep calling him Liet Kynes, which is a spoiler for later in the book, but I can't help it because that's how I know this character's name is Liet Kynes.
Right.
Because everyone, after a certain point in the book, everyone just refers to him as Liet Kynes, and it's just like, yeah, that's just the thing that's stuck in my head.
Right.
But I love the fact that instantaneously you get why the Duke's Leto's people are so faithful to him, is because immediately they go on this flight. He's the one who spots the worm. He's the one who spots the spotters.
Right.
Like,
at impossible distances.
Yes, like, and then it even goes into Paul's like narration here, and it's like, yeah, he must be really amped up right now because like even I could barely see it, and I'm not a regular human like my dad is. You know, I've got training stuff.
Right.
And, like, it tells you how on he is. I like the fact that they go with it's the Duke, it's Paul, it's Gurney, and it's Kynes.
Yeah.
No guards. They have guard like thopters with them. Speaking of which,
ornithopters. So good. That's so good. And they're just them saying they're thopters the entire time is really great.
Which are dragonflies, essentially. They look and fly like dragonflies, which I really like. It's just a chef's kiss of like, let's take an unusual design. Not the usual, it's a jet. Let's take something
it's a helicopter.
Different and weird.
Yep.
And it looks like a dragonfly, and I like the fact that it's a helicopter that looks like a dragonfly.
It's really good.
But that whole thing where like they're hanging around the harvester, they're seeing how it goes. The guys are doing the harvesting, and then the carryall doesn't show up. And the Duke's response is, rip everything out of the thopters. I don't care if we have to sit on the floor.
That's right.
We're gonna get as many people out of that harvester as we can.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not gonna leave them behind because they're quote unquote just Fremen. Like that's not an acceptable loss.
Yeah, like he's like, yeah, there's 10 people on board. We've got space for 8, and he immediately gets on the radio and I was like, yeah, draw straws. 2 of you aren't going. Everybody else, get out here as soon as we land. Yeah, and it's like, they go down and rescue as many people as they could. And you're right, the people who he doesn't rescue are Fremen.
Yep.
And we know they're Fremen because Paul clicks it immediately that they're Fremen. And Kynes is a little bit dodgy about answering questions. And immediately, one of the crew members on the actual harvester looks at Kynes and says, Liet. And it's like, okay.
And Kynes is
like,
shut up. Yeah.
Yep. It's a really great scene because like the Duke gets super mad about the loss of the people, the potential loss of the people. He doesn't care about the harvester. He doesn't care about the carryall not being there. He cares about the fact that people had to die, and he didn't like it. And immediately, Kynes is like, "Oh crap! Do I like these people?
Yeah, because
I like these people."
Because he's sort of saying like the Harkonnens would have cared about the loss of spice. He cares about the loss of life, even if, quote unquote, even if they're Fremen. And for him, that's a problem because he doesn't need any of them to be there right now.
Yeah, and he's been told to let what's about to happen.
Right.
He knows what's coming.
Yeah, just don't get involved.
Told to ignore it.
Yep. Keep your people out of it, and you'll be safe.
Imperial planetologist. He takes his orders from the Emperor.
It's true. That's true. Man, planetologist is so cool. Jeez.
Oh,
And
this is where we get the whole dinner scene right after this
well,
point, unless you had something more on the mining.
Isn't this the doesn't the sandworm eat this mining thing?
Yes.
So
it chomps on that harvester.
I really like how little Herbert describes the sandworm at this point. Like, all you really see is this kind of lump coming across the desert, and then just there's this this like swirling sandstorm underneath it, and it just, the maws of the sandworm are way, way bigger than this mining thing, and it just eats that whole thing and then just leaves. Like, I like that it's not like it looks like this, it has this many teeth, it has this many eyes. It's just like, no, this thing is way scarier and way bigger than we thought, and this is a small one. So, like,
yep,
we're boned. This planet sucks.
Yep. It's yes.
It's really good.
Because I think when they're talking about like on the flight to Arrakis, I think the doctor gives Paul a book and he's like, yeah, from a specimen that they found when it was died, it was only a small specimen, like 100 meters long. It's like, hold up,
wait a minute. Yeah,
small 100 meters.
Yeah, and they're even like, look, we only go on a small part of this planet. Whatever else is way out there, we have no idea. We have no idea how messed up it is way out there.
We don't go to the Great Pan. You don't go past a certain distance because you will die out there 100%.
And also, the thing that makes the sandworms crazy, shields. You won't have them. Good luck. It's so great. I love how he turns everything on its head, where it's like, yeah, you got your shields, you got your sword, you have to do the shield training, it's the best thing for you. Also, they make the sandworms go crazy at her, you will never have one. It's like, yes. Yep. Great. I love it.
It's a really nice, like, little, by the way, all of your world has been turned upside down in so many ways and you have no idea why.
Yep.
We also forgot to mention the reason towns exist on this planet is because of natural mountain formations.
Yes.
That the town they live in, Arakeen, is surrounded by the Shield Wall, which is a giant wall which stops the worms from getting it in.
Yeah, it's really good.
Man.
Anyways, this is the dinner scene now.
It's decent. So, I've got a minor spoiler for the next episode for you, dude.
Mm-hmm.
This entire scene was filmed for the movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This entire scene was cut from the movie. I was so disappointed that this scene was not in the movie.
Okay. Got to get that Blu-ray.
And get them special features because I hope it's on there somewhere.
Right.
Because this is one of my favorite scenes in the book because it's nothing but politics.
Yep.
And verbally dancing, I should say.
Yep.
And learning about everybody who lives on this planet and what their specific roles are. And we forgot to mention the Atreides have a secret hand signals that they use for each other, by the way.
Yeah, like the secret hand signals, and then there's also like coded words in a lot of stuff where they're like, oh, don't worry, we took care of it. Everybody can go back to their meals as normal. And they're like, ooh. He said meals. That means somebody invaded, but everything is okay now. It's like, oh, man.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Plots within plots.
Really good. Like, how much learning do you have to do to be able to catch these secret words in this stuff? It's like, it tells you the intensity of their lives. Like, yes, they may be great houses and rich and everything, but there's 7 different kinds of poison. They have poison snoopers at the dinner table. Oh my God. Poison snoopers.
Them just casually dropping in one line of like, oh, we put one of the poison sniffers in the chandelier above the table. It'll take care of it. I'm like, God, that's so cool. And you immediately know when it says like poison sniffer. It's like, yes, yep, got it. I know exactly what it does. This is great.
We haven't even talked about the fact that the lights are all balls of light that float in the sky.
Yeah,
they just float.
That's so cool.
It's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, this whole dinner scene is really cool because we learn about some people that are at the dinner are upset that they didn't do the towel
Hand
thing from
yes.
before, because it's insinuated that maybe some people are making a significant amount of money off of
Because the servants would scoop her up and then go sell it and then give their
right.
cut back to the people who did it. It's like
Yeah, so it's like
such scumbags.
it's really good that it's not just about the cruelty of it, which is what the Harkonnens are way into, but it's also about, plots within plots. It's not just about showing them this is how rich we are. We're just wasting water. Then go get us our cut on the black market.
Yeah,
That's really good.
Really solid. And you also learn the power dynamics of the planet as a whole here too, because like some people will answer to will like stand up to Kynes. Like Kynes has a conversation with the banker, I think, at one point, and the banker is clearly a Harkonnen agent, which they point out through like. I believe Jessica uses her supernatural witch powers of hearing the way he talks and being like,
there's like
it's really well hidden, but that guy's from Gady Prime, and and now I hear it, and we know he's a Harkonnen guy,
right?
And he gives Kynes crap, and then everyone else at the table is like, some people are laughing nervously, and then like the smuggler, Duncan, and like 4 other people are like ready to go because Kynes is like under threat, kind of thing,
right?
And it's like, okay, we know where people lie, so we know the smugglers have a tie-in with Kynes for some reason, but we don't know why yet.
Right. Yeah, it's a real... And I think it's interesting, too, because you see the Duke being pretty charming here and kind of reaching across the table as much as he can. But then...
He's charming, but also he's aggressive and panicky at the same time. Like, he feels like he doesn't have time. Like, that's the... This is a really good scene because he starts it badly. He starts it angry.
Yeah. Like, he like gives a toast where he's like, screw all of you.
Yeah. Well, Here I Stand, Here I Remain is a great thing.
Yeah. Well, and
then,
we forgot to talk about the chapter previous after Paul almost gets killed by the Hunter Seeker. We have the really great chapter all from the Duke's perspective, which they tried to kill my son.
Really annoyed.
Yeah, where he keeps repeating that they tried to kill my son. Like, he's kind of jumping at shadows at that point where he's saying, not only does Paul realize that things on Arrakis are for real, the Duke is as well. Like, they're not as safe as they thought. There are killers in every shadow, and he's kind of we're seeing the end of him freaking out here at the party of just like, look, man, I'm here for real. The Harkonnens suck. If you're aligned with the Harkonnens, get ready to get your throat cut, man, because I'm not here for any of this.
I'm not playing. Yeah. I do like the fact that we also very quickly, Thufir tried to quit because of the attempt on Paul's life.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for Paul defending Thufir, he would have accepted it.
Yeah.
But Paul's like, dude, like, I survived because of him, because of Gurney, because of Duncan.
Yeah, so, all of them training me is what kept me alive, and you're just gonna let him quit? Like, what are you, stupid? And then when the Duke leaves during the party, I like that you see Paul taking
over.
Yeah, like stepping up a little bit and being politically challenging in a way that seems disarming. Like,
naive.
I'm just here asking questions. What's the problem? And there's like, no, the questions you're asking are like laser focused. You know exactly what you're doing for like 2 or 3 different reasons.
This guy might have enough rank to call you out in a fight, just so you know.
Right.
And then Jessica's line, this is what you were talking about with the coded words, like, my son presents you a garment and you think it's cut for you. And the word garment is the prepare for danger thing, which is what gets all of the guards hiding in the shadows around the edge of the table, by the way.
Yeah.
Including Gurney, who was sitting there playing as Balasat until he takes Paul's place at the table. And I do like the fact that it mentions here, it's never explicitly stated, but it's mentioned here how there are a lot of young girls at this dinner. Yes. And they're trying to use the young girls to get into Paul's sway. Like, they're trying to use that.
Look at all my attractive ladies here. Do you want to hang out with any of these, mayhaps?
The still suit seller's daughter, I think it is one of them.
Yeah, and somebody's like, his still
acts
suits
like
suck.
an idiot.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
they're gonna.
Liet says that.
Yeah, like
Liet kind says that.
Don't buy them from him. They'll kill you. Like they're the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, I like the fact that she acts so dumb throughout the entire thing. And then when the veil falls, like, even Jessica's like, this one is dangerous, because like, I thought
watch
she
out
was
for this
stupid.
lady. Yeah.
And it turns out she's actually excellent at what she's doing right now.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how this dinner ends. I don't remember.
I think it just winds down naturally. I think it cuts after because it's a lot of build up and tension, release, release. Because it happens like 6 times in this one scene. It's the Duke tension release, then Paul tension release like 3 times as well. I think eventually it just winds down and they all just have a good dinner.
Right.
And the reason the Duke had to leave is because they found a thing of a shipment of Harkonnens trying to smuggle in lasguns, which are mentioned for the first time here.
Lasguns is a really good term. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, so he's going to
go deal
goes
with their
that.
own way. And I think it's later it cuts to the nighttime at this point, and this is when we get Drunk Duncan.
Drunk Duncan is really great. Just like, let me ask Jessica, let me fight her. She sucks, man. What's up? You wanna fight a swordman? You witch?
I'm not gonna take orders from no Harkonnen spy when he's smashed off his face.
That's right. It's really good.
Because they describe the reason Duncan is back and not with the Fremen is because, and I quote, Duncan always had a way with the ladies, we'll say.
Yep.
So he escorted a bunch of the women home. He got smashed off his face on Spice Ale, which is nice.
Yep.
Nice.
It's very good.
Yeah, of course. And then when he gets back in, Jessica gets into a confrontation with him. And that's when he lets it slip that everyone, except the people who matter, think that she's the traitor.
Right. Even the Duke thinks you're a traitor. You weirdo. Yeah.
No, he doesn't, but yes.
Right. A wink.
And yes. And this is where Jessica and Thufir have it out. Which, by the way, I know Duncan Idaho is one of the dumbest names in sci-fi ever, but then so is Paul. I don't take no crap from people about Paul, because Luke is a terrible name for a hero too, but nobody seems to complain about that one.
His mom is Jessica. Like, a lot of people in this book have kind of regular names that we would see sort of still commonly today, which there's the thing that I like about Dune. I don't want to stay on this for too long, but the thing I like about Dune is it mixes so many different languages and terms, and you're seeing stuff that's like Middle Eastern and French and the stuff. You're seeing interesting names that you wouldn't see, plus kind of regular names. I don't think we know what Duke Leto's first name is. He's just always Duke.
It's Leto.
Oh, that's his. Oh, duh. Of course. So like you're kind of seeing some kind of common names with some uncommon names, and I like that the book kind of has both of them.
Yeah, I love the name Thufir. Like, that is a really good name.
Kynes is probably my favorite name in this book. Like, Kynes is just a cool name. The planetologist Kynes.
That is a name that fits a scientist. That's why you like it so much.
It's really good.
A scientist, and it fits so perfectly. It's unreal. But yeah, this is the Thufir and Jessica scene where they have an argument over who is the traitor.
It's such a good scene.
Tension. So much tension.
The tension between, like, is either one of you really the traitor? Like, neither one of you trusts each other, and both of you might kill each other here in this scene. And then the reveal of Thufir
finally reveals her powers.
Yeah, because Thufir's like, oh yeah, you're just gonna use your witch powers on me. Ooh, and she does, and he's like, oh no.
He even says Bene Gesserit and then stops, and she's like, no, go ahead.
No,
Finish your sentence.
Say what you were gonna say. And then when she does, he's like, oh no, I messed up. This is for real.
Because she whips out the voice on him.
Yeah, with a capital V.
we haven't talked about the voice yet.
Right. Which seems to be them kind of learning the speech patterns of an individual person and then using that against them to control them in
its speech patterns, personality. It's to do it to someone you know is simple. You have to spend some time around somebody you don't know to be able to. It's basically using audio cues to override their natural instincts. Their or not override their natural instincts, but to override their conscious thought and make them do things unconsciously. Right. So, like when the Reverend Mother calls Paul to her at the start of in the Gom Jabbar scene, she's doing that to prove a point.
Yeah.
Like, yo, you're gonna do what I say.
Like, you don't have a choice in the matter anymore.
Yes. And then when Jessica does it, she does it to prove exactly how powerful she is.
Right.
And
she locks him down.
She's like, yeah, look, two people standing right in front of each other, both with weapons. I could literally stab you in the chest right now and you wouldn't stop me.
Yep. That's really good.
The whole scene is great. We don't need to go into too much detail in it. I love the way it ends. Because she's like, yes, two people, both with weapons. What does it tell you? That I could take out my knife right now and stab you in the chest with it and you could not stop me? But what does it tell you, especially when I give you that knife back and tell you to leave? And then she turns her back on him and dismisses him.
That's right. It's such a good power play of just like, this, I can control you and I can beat you, and I have, and you can leave. I know you're not going to do anything. You now know that I'm not the spy. Yeah.
He still has minor suspicions about it, but like he investigates it further, I believe, is what he thinks he's going to do. But like this whole sequence is just so good because it's like, yeah, we're at a standstill. You might think I'm the spy. I think you're the spy. Well, Jessica accuses him of being a spy in an unusual way because she's like, I don't think you are consciously doing it. I think you are being fed bad information as a human computer. And that is what is causing you to be the spy. Yes. Not that you're doing it because you want to. You're doing it because you don't know all of the facts.
Yeah, your computer was fed bad intel.
Yes, and I like the fact that like he even asks her like, all of this power, why do you not do something with it? Why do you not like the things you could do? Yeah, and then what? We start whipping out the voice on everybody, starting wars, and then before you know it, the universe combines against the Bene Gesserit, and they don't exist anymore.
Exactly. She's not stupid. Like, yeah, I can take over Arrakis tonight, but what does that get me? The Emperor on my doorstep? Like, who the hell's gonna do that? Like, be smart about it, Mentat.
You perform a function, as the Baron Harkonnen says it.
Yep. It's very good.
It's a really good scene. Yeah. And yeah, so it happens. Everything happens at once, and suddenly everyone is dead, and the planet is getting overrun by Harkonnens, and Harkonnens, quote unquote.
Yes. And the Duke gets a new tooth. And doesn't remember why or what he needs to do with it.
Yes.
But I think Dr. Yui is, I think the only thing the Duke remembers is like, hey, when you get around Harkonnens, you'll know what to do. You'll know what to do. Don't worry about it. Just bite down real hard. And yeah. The Duke is like, wait, what? What are you even talking about?
You will die. I will die.
Right.
Well, hopefully, so will the Baron. Right. Because the Baron can't help but be there to rub it in everybody's faces how great he is.
It's so good. Like, it's so believable that this slippery scumbag is just like, you know what? Bring me the Duke. Like, I want to tell him to his face in front of all this luxurious food I have laid out in front of me in this grand room. I need to tell him to his face that he lost and that I'm the one that did it.
Even calls him cousin.
Yes.
Because they're long distant related cousins, which just is
pouring lemon in that wound. Like, just really
What did
great.
you think about the UA moment where he gets Piter to do the business with UA because UA learns the truth. Warner is dead, and
Yep.
he can finally go and join her. Which
Yep.
I'd like this because UA is a traitor. He is a genuine traitor, and everybody knows he's a traitor.
Yep.
He knows he's a traitor, and also he does put the Frem pack in the Ornithopter.
Right. He
With
tries
this,
to make things a little bit better at the last moment, or at least potentially survivable.
yes.
Yeah.
But him learning the truth that like his wife is dead has probably been dead for a long time because he
Yeah.
has a small ability to be a truth sayer because Warner taught him, which she wasn't supposed to do either, by the
Right.
way.
Right.
That's what makes him and Jessica's conversations throughout the course of the start of this book so cool, is because he's like, she's a Bene Gesserit. I know she's a Bene Gesserit. I know Bene Gesserit tricks. I need to be
Right.
very, very careful right now.
That's
Because
right. I can't do anything weird because I know that she will see through anything odd.
And he even
Yeah.
like calls to Jessica to throw her off the fact that he's acting weird, because then
Yes.
she'll assume that he is acting weird because he called her Jessica.
Right.
It's a nice little
My
smoke screen that
informality
he
has
throws
spooked
up.
me.
Yes. UA is called a traitor, and I love his character arc. Like
It's really good.
It sucks that he did get killed, but obviously everybody seems to die in this book. This
Yep.
is not a safe book, we'll say. This isn't
No.
like. It feels like very few people have plot armor in this book. Who would have thought that the Duke later would die on like chapter 20 of like this book?
Right. Yeah, because I think, at least to the part where we're at right now, the only people that survive are Paul and Jessica that we know of at this point.
Yes, it's like it's really fantastic. It's like the whole dinner scene, and the fact that I like the fact that the Baron is so up in his own head about wanting to celebrate it, wanting things to be a specific way, that
Yep.
the way Yue says something to him right after he's been stabbed throws him off his game.
Yeah, he gets
And he's
freaked
like,
out.
oh no.
Yeah,
Oh, what did I do? Something weird is going on now, and I don't like it. Like this,
and he's like,
all of these best laid plans, and now
Right.
something feels awry.
yeah, am I getting? Is Thurfer gonna betray me? Is this person gonna betray me? Like, is it not gonna go to plan? I like that a lot, and I really like that the plan almost works. Like
So close.
it's
like,
so
This close.
yeah, like this, and like the Duke Leto figures it out kind of at the last second and chomps, and it's really interesting that I think it's even in the next chapter you find out that Baron Harkonnen is still alive because he put his shield up at like the very last possible second.
And he even questions like, can the shield protect you from gases?
Right. Did I get it up enough in time? Did I block enough of it? Am I okay? Yeah, that's a very cool scene to see. Duke Leto just being like, well, I'm gonna die either way, so why not take this dude with me?
Baron with me.
Yeah, because
He does get Piter though, which is
Yes.
an interesting thing.
right.
And also, you know, all of the Baron's personal guard, who he very quickly has to promote other people to a personal guard.
That's right. Yeah, this is it. It's surprising because I don't think I was expecting the Baron Harkonnen to live or succeed, because the Duke Leto was always kind of like, we see it coming. We're going to avoid it. We're going to do what we can to sort of get around it. We're going to try and make friends with the Fremen. You know, they're more powerful than we think. We'll get through this. And the fact that they don't is pretty good.
Yes. I think it's also because the Baron moved faster than they expected.
Yeah.
Like, because you get the impression this is like maybe they've been there for 6 months, not even a calendar year.
No, it's been very fast.
Already, this is coming down at them real quick.
Yeah.
But we do get the talks about the Sardaukar being in the uniform here, and the Sardaukar talking down to everybody is hilarious. Like,
Just being sort of
it's
like,
not
what are
even the
you going to do
Emperor.
to stop me? Yeah.
It's just the Sardaukar.
Yeah.
We should have mentioned before the Baron dies. He did do the whole offering the Duchy of Arrakis to Paita instead of Jessica,
Yes.
and how they have to get rid of the Jessica and the boy, which is sad because he wanted to keep Paul as a pet.
Right, which is
Spoiler:
just like,
the
oh,
Baron is evil.
yeah, boy. So gross. Just the worst.
He has certain proclivities, we will say, and
Yes.
they are not great.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gives her up, and then I love this whole sequence where they're talking about this, where the Baron's like, "You do what you want to do. Maybe follow the traitor's suggestion. Maybe don't. Just do what you want to do and deal with the situation. I'm leaving now. I don't know what you have done with them.
That's right.
If questioned by a truthsayer, can honestly answer that I did not kill them with my hand."
That's right. If something were to happen to them on the nightmare planet of Arrakis, who knows? If you kill them horribly, like, you'll probably massacre most of this planet. I would have no idea. Good luck. Bye.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
What did you think of the Baron's other nephew, by the way? We already met Fade Rautha at the second chapter.
Right.
The Beast Raban.
Yeah. This one's really interesting because the book is really really quick to say, like, boy, he's just brutal. He will just go to a planet and sort of accidentally and on purpose just clear everything out just because he wants to kill stuff.
Yeah, and the Baron like tells him, like, okay, Paita's not here anymore. You're back in charge on Arrakis. Squeeze. And his first response is, when do I get replacement workforce? Can I go and like slaughter all of the Fremen? Like, I want to wipe the whole planet out. This is what I want to do.
Right.
Like, you're gonna send me like, slaves, right?
Yeah. He's like, maybe don't squeeze that hard. Maybe that's not.
I didn't say exterminate. I said squeeze.
Right. Yeah. And I think this leads directly into Paul and Jessica escaping, as it were.
Yes, because the plan is to take him in an ornithopter and drop him in the desert. Because that's not mean.
Yeah, they'll just be like, well, they don't know how to walk on the sand, so sandworms will get them. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I kind of like how this whole thing unfolds because it shows that Paul is leaning.
They know he's a threat, but they don't know how much of a threat he is.
Right, and like once he gets, it's just him and Jessica. I like that. You see his Mentat stuff kind of explode here, where it's like, all right, I've got to keep us alive. I need to figure out how to do everything, and just kind of seeing that unfold and like his future telling stuff unfold very suddenly, and seeing Jessica watch that happen and be like, oh no, he's way more powerful than I would have ever imagined.
Yeah, because I like the fact that he started to dream more since he got on Arrakis,
right?
And then it's because of the amount of like spice around him has started to trigger even more of his future visions. Like, even when he's awake now, like,
right?
They get that whole thing where I love the way they deal with the two thugs on the ornithopter. I love the fact that one of the thugs was deaf to try and avoid the voice. Nice.
Yep,
really good, like, thought out plans.
Forgot about that.
They escape and they start like doing the trundle through the desert thing. And Duncan's alive, by the way.
Yeah, they meet up with Duncan.
Yep. Who then goes to find somebody who's going to help them. Liet, later on we learn. But I love that first night in the still tent, where he's awake and he has a full-on future vision and he can't control it. He doesn't know what he's doing. Everything about his life has been wiped out, and this is where the word gets brought up. The jihad gets brought up, and he sees a future where the universe is conquered by Fremen in Atreides colors,
Hmm.
and it makes him sick.
Yeah. It's a terrifying vision.
And he's like he even screams out like a war in his name, and he full on uses the voice to tell his mother to get away from him. That moment is,
Hmm.
you created something that you don't know what you've done, Jessica. Like you,
Right. And you don't know if he's good or not, because right now he seems like
uh
he's really not gonna be good.
yeah, he's struggling with some things at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, and I like the fact that he's constantly fighting against the jihad. Like
Right.
he sees the paths ahead of him, and he's like, no, that path leads to that. I don't want that. I don't
Right.
want that path. I don't want that future. Like, I'm going to do everything I can do except for that.
Hmm.
Like him, it gets very briefly mentioned in this book. Like once, I think it gets one line. He sees what he refers to as a golden path.
Yes. I noticed that because there's I think it's a Chemical Brothers song called The Golden Path. Um and I was just like, "Ooh. All right, here we go."
So that Chemical Brothers song is definitely a Dune reference then,
Yeah.
because the golden path comes into effect in book 3, um,
Okay.
titled "Children of Dune." Um,
Okay.
but the golden path is a path, the path that could potentially lead to success for all of humanity.
Hmm.
But the thing to do is horrifying. Like the thing that the person walking the golden path would have to do is genuinely horrifying.
So the
You already know
means
what it
towards the
is.
ends. Right.
Yes, you already know what it is because I know you know what it is because this is one of the funniest slash dumbest things about Dune ever. Um, but Paul flat out refusing that is
Hmm.
a quality moment.
Yeah, it's interesting to see him fighting with his nature and the visions here of just like these are all of the potentialities here, and him having that like main character moment of like I'm gonna write my own future. It's like, well, we'll see, I
Uh-huh.
guess.
And then by walking one path, you change all the other paths, but you also change the path that you walk on. Like this is the book that got me into future storytelling, time travel, that kind of stuff. This is the book responsible for my enjoyment of that genre as a whole.
Oh, sure.
Because one of the things we haven't talked about is the quotes at the start of each chapter,
Hmm.
which I love them because you can see some of them are from Paul, some of them from like Gurney, some of them are from some princess lady who we don't know who that is. Like, who is this princess lady?
Right,
Who
and she keeps
knows? Like,
referencing like my dad, who sounds an awful lot like Paul.
yeah, she's actually talking about it's Princess Irulan, and she's talking about Shaddam,
Oh, okay.
um, the Emperor. That is, she is the oldest
Okay.
daughter of the Emperor.
Gotcha.
Um, But one of the things that they mention is she's because it's all like things like taken from the life and times of Paul Atreides or
Right.
Dune Awakening and all of these other things that are
Right.
books that she's clearly written. Um, and one of the things that they bring up is like she's talking about the prescient ability to see the future and how Paul describes it as being on an ocean or on a
Mm.
desert, where when you're standing on the top of a dune, you can see all of the paths ahead of you.
Right.
But then you start walking down that dune, and then all of a sudden you can't see that much. All you can see is like the 3 or 4 directly in front of you.
Hmm.
You can't see all of the other things because now you've blinded yourself because you've gone downhill and your line of sight isn't as good anymore.
Right.
And then you get to the top of the next dune, and all of the paths have changed.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
really conceptually, it's a really good way of describing what it might be like.
Yeah.
There is a amazing line in the second part of this book that we will talk about probably to no end because there is some character changes that happen. Not bad,
Mm.
not good, just changes.
Sure.
And I think one of the changes is described perfectly in like one sentence.
Mm.
And it's a sentence that means a lot.
Mm.
But
And
yeah,
it is a book of changes after all.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're in the middle of escaping, and I like the fact that he realizes he's not just a mentat; he's so much more than a mentat.
Yeah.
Because now this is really cool. He looks into the future and sees himself referencing his mother's birth records in the Bene Gesserit temple,
right.
and learns that she is the daughter of Vladimir Harkonnen, the Baron who just died.
Right.
And he brings that information back from the future into current time,
right.
Looks at his mother and sees the genetic signifiers that make it so.
He can see all the little features of a Harkonnen in her face.
Yes, and he uses this future knowledge to put all of his current knowledge together and be like, this is a fact. I know this to be true because not only have I seen it in the future,
right,
but also I'm looking at my mother now. And he flat out says to it, like, you're the daughter of a Harkonnen.
Mm-hmm.
I am the grandson of a Harkonnen.
Right.
Like, look in your mind and you know it's true. And then she does the same thing. She starts putting the facts together. And he even does this whole argument with her, like, where she's like, he is surprised that she doesn't put pieces together as quickly as he can.
Right.
Because nobody could predict how quick he's become, how powerful, how on a different level his mind is working now with the future visions and everything else and the ability of a mentat. Like, all of that stirred together make a very strong individual, we'll say.
Right. There's, I mean, the rest of this stuff here for a little bit is pretty interesting, but not probably for us to dwell a lot on. A lot of it is like getting used to the suits and wearing it correctly, and he kind of knows how to wear the suit correctly without knowing he is.
Yes.
Like it fits him sort of naturally in a way that people are kind of impressed by. They escape from a sandworm because he kind of
using a thumper.
Yeah, like a thumper, and he sort of figures out how to walk on the sand correctly because he sort of saw it from some Fremen earlier and puts two and two together. They run into Duncan, Idaho at some point.
Cans.
They
meet up with Cans. Duncan brings Cans back to them, and they go to the secret base in the middle of the mountains.
Right, where they have this like backdoor escape there, where Duncan seems like Duncan isn't going to make it out, and Kynes, as we see in a later chapter, has a rough go of it. Where he essentially gets swallowed by the planet after having a series of very strong hallucinations about his dad, trying to tell him, like, hey, you can not terraform Arrakis, but you can change Arrakis into something that's hospitable and somewhere that people can live, but you gotta do it slowly. The way that they want to do it is wrong, and that's going to make things worse. But you can make this happen. You just gotta survive. And I like that Kynes knows this like gas, this spice gas bubble is growing underneath him, and the planet's gonna devour him shortly.
Yeah, that's also where we get the first mention of the Little Makers, which I like.
Yes. Yep.
Which we didn't mention. They call us the Fremen call the sandworm the Makers.
Yeah, which is a very cool way of painting them. Like, there's this. I like that there's this respect to them, where it's like they're probably doing something good on this planet that still allows them to live. And also, let's just leave them alone. Because not only are they giant and terrifying, but they're probably doing something, we think. Yeah.
They are responsible for the spice. That is what the Fremen know for a fact.
Yeah. However that happens.
Yes. That gets explained in, like, book 3. There is, like, a conversation about that. But, yes, there is a life cycle that takes place that involves the worms, and part of that is the creation of spice.
Right. And then I think as we
get Thufir meets up with the Fremen, which is one of my favorite scenes because it's so stupid and so great at the same time. Where Thufir and a bunch of his soldiers are basically trapped in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
And they were being hunted by Sardaukar,
Yeah.
and they were killed by the Fremen,
Yeah.
who like came out of nowhere, killed them all,
Mm-hmm.
and lost 2 and killed like 40 of them.
I really like this scene because I think
It's the miscommunication. Stranger in a strange land. This
Yep.
is my jam. Where Thufir is saying one thing and the Fremen doesn't get it, and then he says something and Thufir doesn't get
Right.
it. But we, the audience, are like, okay, I can kind of see what both are saying.
Right. And the idea that Thufir is getting the idea that, okay, we really did underestimate the Fremen because they just wiped out a whole bunch of the universe's best soldiers and barely broke a sweat, and 2 of them died. And they were like, yeah, 2 of us died, but now we got a bunch more water. It's fine.
Yep. And like they're talking about like the cannons, and they're like, yeah, like I'm really interested in the cannons. Like, go and take one. And like we did. We took 2.
Yeah, we
Like,
took
it was
yeah, we
cool.
took a couple of them. They're cool, man. And
They're in a
Thufir's-
cave for
if
Liet
Thufir's
to have
like,
a look at if he wants.
I'm sorry, what? You took a bunch of cannons? For real?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's...
Like,
this was a real good chapter overall.
yeah,
And then...
because I like the fact that he keeps saying that they were really good fighters.
Yeah.
He's like, hold on, what? The good fighters, do you know who they were? Because they fought really, really well.
We had a
that
really
fight.
good fight. Do you know who they are? It's just like, yeah, bro, there's these
This
guys.
is Sardaukar.
Oh, and they're like,
Like,
oh, interesting. We'll have to remember that.
Do you know
It's
what,
like,
Legion? Do you know what, Legion? Where can we find more?
That's right. Oh, man. It was really good. And I think this is where the... Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that is a fantastic moment, because that is like, you're right, like, everybody underestimated the Fremen. Everybody underestimated them, because they're casually talking about losing 2 to 40
Right.
against the best of the best of the best.
Yep.
And they want more.
they're itching to fight more of them, because that was fun.
It's the John Wick moment. Like,
Right.
you've had the Sardaukar like hype train, like, from like 7 different people.
Yep.
And then this batch of unnamed Fremen show up, who we don't even really learn the names of because of what happens to them. But this is just no-name Fremen, and they're literally talking about this like it was a casual romp at the beach.
Yeah,
Like, what
exactly.
the hell?
Yeah. And I think this is where Thufir and his squad kind of join the Fremen at this point, the ones that want to join.
They make it a matter of water. Is this a water matter? Why didn't you say it was a water matter?
That's right.
The terminology is
water.
great.
Yeah, all water.
Like,
yeah. All right. Sure.
Yeah. Because, yeah, he joins with them, but then that is when the Sardaukar show up with stun pistols.
Yeah.
Because nobody wears shields in the desert.
Right. Oh, man, yeah. Yeah, that's some good stuff, and then we get more Paul and Jessica stuff where eventually they run into a squad of Fremen that are not super happy to see them, but eventually kind of warm up to them because of the...
They warm up to Paul. They're like,
That's true.
Paul calls them out. It's like, yeah, you're Stilgar. I met you once. I was at the meeting where you showed up and met with my dad. And
That's
Stilgar's
right.
like, cool. You're the one Liet said we should accept into our society.
Yeah,
so we'll
you're
see
cool,
about
man.
you. The woman, she got to go.
Yeah,
Like,
she can go back to the
offense,
desert.
lady.
See you later.
You got to go. Like,
Yep. We can't have one more person taking our water.
It's literally, we can't have you, like, have your weakness expose us to danger. So therefore, you're done.
Yep.
And then he tries to kill her, and she promptly kicks his ass.
It's really good. And then uses like the secret code words to sort of be like, yeah, well, what if this stuff? And he's like, ooh, she knows the ways. All right. Okay, sure. And we get introduced to, what's her name?
Chani,
thank you. We get introduced to Chani, which I'll just call her Zendaya at this point. We get introduced to her, and I like that she's like, oh, yeah, this Paul dude, yawn, whatever. He's cool.
Yep.
He's not anything. He's super loud. We got to fix that
Yeah.
like right away.
And you took like the worst path up this cliff, bro. Like, come on, let me show you an easier way down.
She's just picking at him the whole time of like, oh yeah, he's super cool, the faded one. Ugh, all right. Anyways,
she calls him boy man or man boy or man child or whatever it is that
like
Stilgar calls him.
It's really great. Stilgar's like, hey man, come on. She's like, what? He's like a boy. He's like a loud boy dude. Whatever. This dude sucks.
I love this whole sequence because like Jamis is hilarious throughout this whole scene. Jamis is like super annoyed that he just got done in by an off-worlder with no desert experience, and he just got done in really badly. But then this whole thing where Paul sees Chani, knows almost immediately who she is, has been dreaming about her for who knows how many years.
Right.
And he's gobsmacked, and like his voice goes, his breath goes, everything about him is gone essentially. And she's just like, dude, you suck. Like so hard.
He's like, she's beautiful, my dreams. She's like, you suck. It's like, oh, okay, cool.
Also, she's like a 16-year-old girl in the middle of the desert with these hardened soldiers.
Right. She knows a thing or two about living in the desert. Like, yeah, I like that. I like that introduction a lot because I was worried it was going to be like, oh, Paul. She's like, you suck. Get off my planet. It's really good. And then I think this is where we end up with the big one-on-one fight that kind of wraps up our first part of the book.
Yeah, they agree to basically blend tribes. Jessica and Paul get Stilgar's continents.
Yes.
Which involves a handkerchief wrapped around the arm.
Yep.
They have a bunch of conversations about water and prophecy and everything else. They make some treks through the desert. They are literally in a military number unit as well. I think it's 40 people in total,
I think so,
which is a military unit, including Chani. And like the fact that Stilgar's like, yo, you two, you follow behind, you make sure no path, no trace of us should ever be shown. And make sure you do a good job because we got 2 newbies with us. So you do a good thing here.
Yep.
Make sure it takes place. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they are at the Cave of Owls, I believe it is.
Something like that, yeah.
They get there just in time before sunrise. And over the next stretch of desert is Sietch Tabor, which is home. But they have to basically get in for the day. And that's when Jamis starts a fight.
Jamis starts talking, man. He is...
What did you think of Jamis, out of curiosity?
I don't know. He's interesting because a lot of it is like... A lot of the Fremen are like, there's 2 more people using up our water. I mean, we're kind of at capacity now, so like, if we want to make it home, we're like right there, man. We got 1 more night's worth of travel. We gotta get there, and you picked up 2 people. They're like desert newbies. Like, this is just, I don't know, man. And Jamis seems to be the most vocal about it.
I think I love the sequence with Stilgar and him when he invokes the Umtal rule, which is a fight to the death. We soon learn,
right?
But Stilgar, this whole sequence is where Stilgar gets his stripes for me because he's like, he talks with Jessica. He explains his rationale to Jessica when they first capture them. And it's like, this is the situation. I don't like it, but this is what it is. My job as a leader is to protect my tribe. You might bring death to my tribe, so therefore you have to go.
Yeah, it's like it's a numbers game. Like, we have X amount of water and supplies and people, and that's the limit we have. Your experience and you just being here isn't going to work. So it's nothing personal. You see him all right, you got to go.
Yeah, and like then him realizing how useful she would be is fantastic. Him immediately changing, him underestimating Jessica and Jessica underestimating him is fantastic. Like,
it's really
they
good.
have the whole conversation about values and what's needed and what's not. And then when Jamis invokes the Umtal, he goes at Jamis hard, and he's just like, come on, start a fight with me. I dare you, start a fight with
Yeah.
me. I want you to.
You can fight me. Don't worry about him. Yeah.
I am saying everything to make you as angry as I possibly can because I want you to come at me.
Yeah.
I don't, because he doesn't know Paul. He doesn't know his abilities. All he knows is Liette told him to protect the kid. He's going to protect the kid.
And he just seems like a young kid that's lost in the desert.
Exactly. So he's doing everything he can to try and stop this thing from happening because he knows it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how bad or which bad direction it's going to go in.
Right.
But he knows it's going to be bad. And the whole thing where, like, him and Jamis have the conversation, Jamis cottons onto it as well. I was like, stop it. Stop trying to make me fight you. I want to fight the kid.
Right. Wait a minute. I don't want to talk to you. Yeah. Wait. I want to fight this kid. Yeah. Yeah.
And Jessica's like, well, I'm my own champion. And he's like, no. That's not what it says. And she's like, well, surely it could mean. He's like, you don't get to tell us about our traditions.
Right. You can maybe shut up for the rest of the fight, or your kid is going to die. She's like, maybe I will do that then. Thank you.
Yep. And I do like the fact that Stilgar asks her a question and then waves it away. It's like, sorry. Right. I didn't mean to ask you a question.
I got caught up in it, my bad. Yeah, it wasn't a trap. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Don't say a word, please, because that would be problematic.
And I do really like that at some point Paul is like, look, man, can we just stop fighting? Like, I'm gonna win. I don't want to kill you. Like, this isn't a big deal. And everybody's like, gasp. What? Stop the fight? What is wrong? How dare you? And he's like, oh, no, what did I say? I'm sorry. I don't want to kill this guy.
He asks him to yield when he draws first blood.
Right.
I do like that Chani gives him the secret knowledge. Yo, he's two-handed. Watch out for the switch.
I do like that, where it's like, hey, you might be dumb, but, like, maybe I don't want to see you sliced up, so, like, watch out for the tossing of the knives here.
Yeah. But the fight is good, and it establishes, like, good. Paul might be inexperienced, but he can go, like, really go. Like, it gets so bad because this is what you said about the world flip is great here, because he is trained to attack through shields.
Yes.
Which means he attacks slowly. He defends lightning quick.
Yep.
But when he attacks, he moves slower because of shield training.
I liked this happening where he's like, he's trying to cut, but he's moving very slow to get through the shield, or like get around the shield. And this guy's like, hey man, that's not gonna work. Like, you had me dead to rights. What are you doing here? Yeah,
and then Stilgar gets annoyed because he thinks he's playing with him. He thinks Paul is playing with his food.
It's like a cat and mouse thing. Yep.
It's like, oh, it's such a nice little... And, like, that's the thing he asks Jessica, and he's like, nope, don't answer. Don't answer. Sorry.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry. Don't answer.
Yeah.
And then, Paul does the thing, which I like the fact that he still uses a shield technique, but he uses it effectively. Because they mentioned that, like, if a guy is jumping at you, no matter how good the shield, it's still, the blade is going to go through it because it's a straight line. There's nothing to deflect. He's coming at you with his body weight. So he literally stabs him as he's coming down.
Yeah.
And then, like, immediately Jessica's like, yo, he's never killed a dude before. This is, like, his first fight, by the way.
Right.
So maybe don't be treating my kid like he's some form of monster, because he was...
Go easy on him, please.
He wasn't playing with his food. He was literally... He's never done this before.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to fight.
Yeah, and I also love the fact that she does the whip crack with him of like, was that good? Did you enjoy that? I hope you didn't. To immediately snap him out of that. Let's not get used to like taking people's lives,
good job,
please.
Killer. And it's just like, whoa, boy. Okay. Yikes. Yeah. Yeah. And then he gets his new name.
2, I believe.
Oh, yeah, because he gets Muad'Dib, which is something mouse? Little mouse?
It's the yes, I think it might be Little Mouse, but it's the little desert mouse who he saw hopping across the desert, which is a nice little touch.
I like that quite a bit. And I don't know what his other name is.
Usul, which is his tribe-specific name.
Right.
That's the name that only the tribe can call him. No one outside of the tribe is ever to know that name.
Right.
Muad'Dib is his public name. Usul is his private name.
Gotcha.
Rewind all the way back to the beginning of the book.
Okay.
When he's talking to the Reverend Mother about his dreams.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about Chani, and he quotes her as saying, "Tell me about the waters of your homeworld, Usul."
Oh, interesting.
And
Yeah.
he makes the connection that Usul might be a name and not the planet's name.
Right. Man, this is the I haven't talked about this yet at this point, but this surely seems like a book that greatly rewards multiple reads because of all this stuff
100%.
that's interwoven and calling back and forward and all this time travel manipulation stuff. Like this, you saying that of the first chapter, sort of me going back and reading it would be like, oh, yes, all right, I know, yeah, I gotcha, yeah. And that brings us to the end of
Where we
our
stopped today,
first
yes.
part here. We've been recording for almost 3 hours, which is about where we thought. I came out of Dune, this part of Dune, much more positively than I was expecting.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that. I genuinely am. Because one of my concerns for this has been, oh, God, I hope Boston likes this. I hope this is not going to be a season of Boston crapping all over the thing
That's
that
right,
I love.
being like, let's talk about this
most.
trash rag we read. It was very funny because when I was telling my wife that I was reading Dune, she goes, oh, you're rereading it? And I was like, no, I've never read it before. And she's like, you've never read Dune? And I was like, okay, so I'm getting it from everybody. I'm the last person on the planet that can read that is reading Dune. But I'm mentioning that because Dune is so legendary in science fiction. Not that it's the first one, but it's kind of your...
So, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned in the first part of this episode, I don't know how I remember this, but I mentioned that essentially Dune is the grandfather of modern science fiction.
Yep.
Arguably it's not. Arguably it's the father of modern science fiction, and Asimov is the grandfather. Because it's like the two steps you take to all modern science fiction is Asimov, Herbert, sci-fi. Like that's literally the things that lead you to that path.
Like Tolkien isn't the grandfather of fantasy, but he's the one you know the most, like Herbert.
Yes. He's responsible for most modern high fantasy, specifically high fantasy in his case. Definitely is one of those things. But I realized I did forget to mention Asimov at the first because that's someone I have no experience with. None at all.
I've read so much Asimov.
Yeah, I haven't.
So maybe that's where our paths diverged. I read Asimov. That's funny. Yeah. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is something I've read a whole bunch.
I literally bought Foundation because I've heard it's fantastic. So
yeah,
I have it. I might save it now for a future season.
Yeah, maybe we'll do the trade. The trade. There's the Nine Inch Nails versus
Poets of the Fall.
Poets of the Fall. Yeah, that'll be our But yeah, I think I didn't have that many expectations of Dune going in, other than most people who make it through Dune really love it, and if you bounce off at the beginning, now I understand. I don't blame you. Like that, I totally get it, and maybe science fiction really isn't your thing, and you just kind of gave it a shot. But I definitely can see why people love this so much. I really did click with it. There's some stuff in the middle that we talked about that I kind of struggled with, but it's not really.
Was there anything in particular that jumps out at you from that stuff?
It's the stuff between landing on Arrakis and the dinner scene. There's some stuff there where it's like, all right, let's keep this train moving. The book was kind of moving at a good pace, but we're kind of flagging a little bit, but it's not super long.
Like the tree discussion.
Yeah, it's a lot of that stuff where it's like, all right, let's keep moving. We've got some good political stuff to get back to. But yeah, I actually did genuinely really like this. It was hard for me to stop reading this. It was like, chapter 34. Oh, that first line's real good. But we do have the first part of the movie to go watch, which I am genuinely very much looking forward to. That we'll talk about that in the next episode. But I could see why the movie especially was so, people were looking forward to it so much after a lot of the previews and the trailers and stuff, and I'm very excited to both read more and to go watch that movie.
So I will say, like, it's not obviously, and this goes with everything. We'll probably talk about it obviously in the next part too. This is a hard thing to adapt, dude. Like, this is,
and now I get it. Like it's a huge
how?
thing.
Like, how do you adapt this? Like, I'll flat out say off the top, like, mentats are not even mentioned in the movie, and it's understandable.
Like, how do you even broach that topic? Like it's intense.
This has been like, I mean, what did you say? Like a good maybe 2/3 of the book is this?
Basically,
like,
yeah.
Say?
Yep.
And that's a lot of, like, half of a book, 2/3 of a book, and the amount of information you have. I'm still not sure if at the end of this season, once we've done the 2 movies, the full book, we do the 1985 movie just to see how bad things can go.
Take that trip.
But I'm genuinely pleased that you actually like this. It is, like you said, it's one of those things where, like, the more you read it, the more you go into it, the more stuff gets, like, explained and felt and things like that.
Yeah.
It tickles me. So, minor non-spoilers here. The overarching plan for the Dune franchise by Frank Herbert was he set up this whole storyline because basically at the end of the Golden Path, what was going to happen was there was going to be an invasion from an outside galaxy, essentially. So an outside universe, like places that, somewhere that had a specific ability, but he didn't have a name for them. He didn't have anything like that was set. He was just like,
that's his outline.
Invasion. Yes, like big invasion coming in from an unknown source that's basically a threat to all life as we know it, or as the people in the books know it. The Golden Path is what allows both the escaping of that future where everybody is dead, but also allows them to fight back against it.
Oh, okay.
And it tickles me because that was outlined, and then very recently I heard that George Lucas has got this thing where his original plan for Star Wars was for an outside force to come and invade and wipe everything out.
Right.
And then the Rebellion and the Empire would team up against this outside force. And from what I understand, that's exactly what's currently happening in Destiny. It's like...
Yes, very much so.
It's like, how many people are going to steal from Dune?
It's just like, oh, I like that, yoink. Herbert made the blueprint, man.
He kind of did. But I'm assuming now you understand the references. Like, there's probably a lot more references that you will see now. Like you said, the Golden Path.
Yep.
That's not something that you probably would have clicked was a Dune thing until you read it in this book.
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot.
There's a lot. Yeah, I did really, to wrap this up, I did really enjoy this book. And we read 2/3 of it because we ended up on chapter 33 and there's 48 chapters. So we're like 2/3 of the way through.
The next set of chapters is just, it's a lot. Like, the way I view the end of this book is very similar to how I view the start of this book, where it's just like, hey, here's a small time frame of time in the book with so much information and so much development almost immediately. Like, I deliberately, one of the reasons we stopped here is because the first movie stops basically at this exact point too.
Oh, that makes sense.
So when we get to the movie, we will literally hit that fight scene and then it will end after that fight scene. But also, right after this is a huge time jump. And I love taking the break right before the time jump because that gives us time to breathe. And then it also gives us time to experience that time jump oumselves before we get to... Now it's like 4 years. I think it's 4 years later, maybe?
Okay. It's a pretty good time jump, yeah.
Yes. So, it's going to be interesting, we'll say.
Yeah. Man. All right, well, that's That's our first expectedly long episode for the first part of the Dune book. If you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Next episode, we will be talking about the first part of the movie, and we hope you join us then. See you next time. Bye.
5-star runtimes, baby.
We got him.